Hi, and welcome back to Regaining the Balance, audiobook reading of the Rosicrucians and Their Teachings, Part 4. If you guys like the video, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I might as well say it now because I'll be reading for the next 2 hours or so. So, I just wanted to make sure all the sound is going good here. And it looks like it's fine. Alright, so let us share the screen so you guys can see the book too. Boop. There we go. All right, everything's clear. Okay, so we have about 60 pages to go through. The Rosicrucians in America. It is impossible to say when the first Rosicrucian came to the New World, but in 1871 the first, quote, manifesto or declaration of principles, unquote, was issued in America. Dr. Pascal Beverly Randolph was then leading the new thought movement and led it nobly. Many there are who, learning the secrets and mysteries of life from him, went their way and taught others the truth. But few of these gave credit to whom credit belongs. In all ages, this has been one of the curses of all great movements. Men learn from masters of thought, but are very seldom willing to give credit to those that they should until that time comes. Thought will not be given to the world in its entire purity. The Manifesto. We freely admit our Oriental character and modes of thought and challenge the showing of any grand human idea that did not originate in the Eastern lands. We claim to know the grand secret and to be able to teach mankind many things concerning the body, soul, will, prolongation of existence, and concentration of mental energy, never dreamed of by the thinkers of colder latitudes, and the assertion that any of our books contain matter opposite to the pure Christian faith, we utterly and flatly deny. True, these books contain startling and extraordinary statements and beliefs, yet we boldly challenge any human being to point to one doctrine at all subversive of the correct human morals, in whole or in part, or any doctrine which has the slightest tendency to draw the soul 1 inch away from God. On the contrary, hosts have been saved from despair, suicide, irremediable ruin by pursuing these works. It is urged against us that we, quote, believe in and practice magic, unquote, and we admit the fact. We certainly do. The pure, white, bright, effulgent, radiantly glorious magic of the human will, through and by which alone human passions are made to correct themselves, by which alone otherwise defenseless woman is fully armed against the coarse brutalisms of thousands of misnamed, quote, men and husbands, unquote. And this purely Christic power, too, an integrant of the early Christian faith, dead here and buried nearly everywhere else, beneath mountains of gabble dust, deserts of error. It is further charged that we have, quote, certain quite extraordinary esoteric or secret doctrines, unquote. We admit the fact, and the animus is apparent from that other fact, namely, quote, that these are secret doctrines are only divulged to the pure, virtuous, and worthy, unquote. Our assailants failed in all their schemes to penetrate these mysteries, and the inference is plain, nor can even the disaffected fail to see the reasons why. Now, however, we herewith present some of the secret doctrines without holding only such as concerns the domestic, celestic, magnetic, and volential interests and life and power of mankind, which we only reveal to initiates of the higher degrees, and be it known that there is nothing in these secrets to soil the fabrics of the fairest and purest female mind on the whole vast earth, much less that of any man who ever lived. We publish these things now for the first time in our long history, um, or since the world began, a brief and partial compend of what we believe and know concerning methods whereby the human being can penetrate to the domains of the shadow and glimpse the ineffable effulgence in the glorious light, and learn immeasurably more of the dynamic or mechanical, the chemistry, sensual, emotional, electric, sorry, ethereal, physical, magnetic, and intellectual universes, or realms and grades of being, than is possible to man not possessing our data and therefore ignorant of the laws, or via. We claim to stand in the door of the dawn, within the crypt portals of the luminous worlds, and that the lamp that lights us is love supreme. Unlike others, we do not recognize God as the light, for this can be seen and known, but as the unfathomable shadow, the unreachable center, the impenetrable mystery, the unimaginable majesty, utterly past discovery, and who, as we approach, ever recedes, all alluring us thus through illimitable ages and epochs up the steep mountains of achievement. The whole end of man's being is which opinion we, of course, differ from all philosophies in Christendom. It's funny how this whole paragraph seems like it comes right out of that. If you guys haven't listened to the book about Atlantis yet, that should be an interesting one. We hold that no power ever comes to man through the intellect. We say that the adage "knowledge is power" is false, but that goodness alone is power, and that pertains to the heart only. Hence, that power comes only to the soul through love, not lust, mind you, but love, the underlying primal fire life, subtending the basis of being, the formative flowing floor of the worlds, the true sensing of which is the beginning of the road to personal power. Love lieth at the foundation, and is the synonym of life and strength and cleanliness. Thus it happens that a loving couple grow youthful in soul, because in their union they strike this divine spark, replenish themselves with essence of life, grow stronger and less brutal, and draw down to them the divine fire from aerial spaces. This now is by accident. Couples not loving exhaust each other. Ain't that the truth? And wear their souls to shreds, so that after death they enter the ethereal realms in a state of immortal scraniness, requiring a long lapse to reach celestial plumpitude. We claim methods of averting all this, and how? Holding, as we do, that deity dwells within the shadow beyond the everlasting flame, the amazing glories of which minds have confounded with the very God. We declare all things, especially the human soul, to be a form of fire. There you go, Philosophy of Fire, guys. That's the other book we read. That man is not the only intelligence in nature, but that there are, and the aerial spaces abound with, multiform intelligences, having their conscious origins in earth, as man has his in matter, and that there are grades of these, towering away an infinite series of hierarchies, human and ultra-human, to an unimaginable etern. We hold that the soul is a polar world of white fire within the human body, that is negative only resides within the brain as a general dwelling, that in dreamless sleep it goes to the solar plexus to impart stores of life fire to the body. In dreams it visits by sight and report other scenery, and that all dreams have a determinate meaning and purpose. We hold that the other pole of the soul is situated within the genital system. Scientific researches have proven this conclusively, that in true marriage the entire soul officiates at the celebration, that both positive and negative of each parent assist at the incarnation of the new souls that the genuine marriage calls into the world, that where no mutual love inspires the parents, only one of the two forces of their souls officiate, and the consequence is that of a world is full of half men, half women, and weaklings, and thus it is seen why illegitimate children are generally the smartest. It is because love was the inspiration. Apply the principles laid down by us, and it is seen how wherefrom it happens that the inferior brain but strong loving woman become mothers of the mental moral millionaires, while brainy mothers give us children born to intellectual penury. Inferior brain but large love natured men usually become fathers to their mental superiors, while we all know that genius generally, nay, notoriously, produces mental weaklings. We are quite aware of the extraordinary I think it says novelty of our beliefs. Yeah. But we intend to revolutionize the world with them, nevertheless and notwithstanding. And then there's an asterisk. Asterisk is when children are born right, when we will see men and women not with a particle of meanness in their souls, and could Dr. Randolph but see the rapid strides made in this direction within the last few years, he would know that his teaching so boldly put forth has grown and blossomed. Oh wow, this is a long one. Forth into grand and noble flowers. Prenatal influence counts for far more in the lives of coming men and women than all the other things besides. Men and women are either born honest or criminals, and in every case, okay, I don't agree with that one, but in every case, the mother or father or both are positively responsible for what their children become. It is as impossible for a child born of a woman, God save the name, who contemplated murder of that child. To be honest, it is possible to change the seasons of the year by other than natural laws. Okay. The woman that tries abortion without success brings forth a criminal. If not a murderer, that's yeah, okay. As sure as that it is light where the sun shines, no law can help it. She decrees it, and it is so. It must not be understood that woman alone is the fault of this. Nay, More often it is the fault of him who calls himself the husband and father, yet no beast in the field will ever commit the crimes that these same men so-called commit every day, nay, every minute in every so-called civilized nation. Men and women can bring forth whatever kinds of offspring they desire, mentally, physically, intellectually, and physically. Okay. Oh, psychically, sorry. And psychically, it is within their power. All they need to do is to will and act, and it shall be so. When the men at the head of our courts of justice once learn these mighty truths, then will the real criminals be punished, and not those who are the victims of circumstance over which they have not the slightest control. Men are born either honest or criminals, here we go again, and in 99 cases out of 100, it is the fault of one or both of the parents. Well, you all can think about what you take that as it is. Back to the main text. Now the superior pole of the soul is in direct magnetic and ethereal contact with the soul of being, the foundation fire of the universe, which all that vast dominion underlying increase, growth, emotion, beauty, heat, energy, and the soul, S-O-L-E this time, and base of being, the subtending love or fire floor of existence. Hence, through love, man seizes directly on all that is, and is the actual contacts and rapports with all the singular every being that feels and loves within the confines of God's inhabitable universe. But any amount of brain or learning he may have affiliates him to a very few at most, because all God's creatures love and feel, while comparatively few can think and know. Love forever against the world. The positive element or part of the soul in the male is in, near, and about the prostatic gland with three radii extending to the connecting viscera, whence it happens that the emasculation injures the very soul itself. The female, the major force of the soul, resides in the uterus with three radii extending to the right and the left, ovaria, and the connecting viscera, whence it happens that illness or injures there have the most baneful and debilitating effect upon all other departments of her nature. A quote, a fine specimen of man, unquote, is never spoken of mere bundles of brains and learning, but always one with fine physical presence and magnetic fullness and indicative love, well cultured. So also of woman. Thus the world unconsciously acknowledges that much of the truth enunciated now by us, declaring that true manhood is more or less en rapport with one or more of the upper hierarchies of intelligent potentialities, earthborn and not earthborn. We believe that there are means whereby a person may become associated with and receive instructions from them. More than that, we believe in talismans, that it is possible to construct and wear them, and that they emit a peculiar light discernible across the gulfs of space by these intelligent powers, just as we discern a diamond across a playhouse. That such are signals to the beholders, and that they will and do cross the chasmal steeps to save, succor, and assist the wearers, just as a good brother here flies to the relief of him who shall give the grand hailing signs of distress. This is provable. This Asiatic mystery of the will, properly cultivated, is the highest aid to man, for it is a divine energos, white pure magic, the miracle-working potentiality which cometh only to the free and wholly unshackled human soul, while to woman it is the only salvation from the marital vampirism, the shield and buckler of her power, and the groundwork upon which be builded the real rule of her influence in the world and at home. We say that the field of its action over the natural elements of physical being, 1, over the etherics of space, 2, over succession of duration of events in time, 3, but that these powers and energies are not to be had for the mere asking. They are obtainable only through triumphant abnegation of mental littleness, small selfitude, and reasonless egotism. Yep. And by victorious performance of the tasks willed by it, the very basis of the law of physical evolution, tasks of mind essential to the rapid growth beneath the outer and above the scene of all who seek to become knowing, 1, magnetic, 2, powerful, 3, for a regal, thus trained will in man or woman is the only road to vigor. 1, perpetuity of specific energy, 2, increment of youth life in all at any lapse of terrestrial time, 3, an attainment of special energy, 4, beyond the lot of ordinary human beings, quote, accidents, unquote, aside. In a word, we claim that it is the only means of mastery over the sublimer secrets and forces of the natural, ethereal, and celestial universes, and of the first as more concerning embodied man, because it leads directly to the key wherewith can be unlocked the seven gates. Money, 1, love, 2, clairvoyance, 3, special mental power, 4, general power, 5, magnetic presence, 6, ubiquity, or farsight, 7. Of these, the writer of this manifesto chose the second, third, and fourth, with what results the wide world well knows. Many are called, but few are chosen, to abide with us in absolute full fellowship for 3 reasons. First, haste, impatience. Second, grabbalism, because silence is strength, and the silent lip and steady head alone are worthy. Third, because we do not believe in the, to us, absurd dogma of human equality. It is the demonstrable negation of all human reason and experience. It is a hypocritical, cruel, and delusive falsehood, puts people out of their element and into wrong positions. It never was, will, or can be true for quote-unquote aristocracy of some kind, always rules, is always a unit in interest, while quote-unquote democracy always is ruled and is eternally at war with itself and clashing about its own interests, which interests it perpetually injures and destroys. Interesting point. But it is true that some souls are nobler, better, higher, finer, richer, riper, rounder than these 7. Than some other souls, and are worth immeasurably more, whether weighed or plumbed in God's scales or man's. For some souls are young, green, acid, acrid, imperfect, and non-poised. These 7, and such stand for eons of ages gaping on the highways at regal souls rushing across the deep towards achievement, here, there, now, and then, up the streets of the worlds and down the corridors of heaven, splendid, quote, aristocratic, unquote, souls who will circumnavigate eternity while the others are wondering, quote, what next, unquote, and, quote, did you ever, unquote. New souls just created, requiring 1,000 or 2 of ages to get their eternal sea legs on before being able to steadily walk the decks of the eternal ship of Centurix and power, or compete with those who, living now, yet have passed their ordeals long before this civilization had taken root in the moldy soil of scores that had preceded it. Men who make and govern circumstances instead of allowing circumstances to govern them, men of absolute individuality of character, born kings of will, and majestic of purpose. The reason why will be readily seen by recurring to the basic propositions of the divine sciences, which declare that God, the soul of the universe, is positive heat, celestial fire, that the aura of deity, God, Od, is love, the prime element of all power, the external fire sphere, the informing and informative pulse of matter, the induction of crystalline, for it follows that whoso hath most love, whether its expression be coarse or fine, cultured or rude, hath therefore most of God in him or her, the element of time being component of the perfecting of all refining influences over the ocean, if not upon the hither side. Conversely put, the statement stands thus: whoso most resembles God, therefore hath most of love, goodness, and the elements of power. God is not a libertine. Now these latent energies we claim that we alone have the true knowledge of, that we understand the laws of love, will and ethereal force, and the principles and modes of their evolution and crystallizations in the homes, the resulted aims at being the elimination of the gross and their orderly consolidation into personal power. We hold that love is ever, was, and eternal will be absolutely pure. Paste is not diamond. Paste is not diamond, though they resemble somewhat. Nor is love ever anything but its own transcendent self. Yet normal passion is divine because through it alone God gives true men the great man-wanting world. There can be no such thing as unholy love, nor good badness, or bad goodness. True passion is but one and a minor mode of love's expression. Its offices are triplicate, and when people understand that one grand secret, farewell to social, domestic, and other ills, and it is this grand secret we have, for long years, been teaching, somewhat, not fully, in the Rosicrucian books, but both shores of the ocean that girdle the world. We know that brains and intellect differ, but hearts and affections are ever the same, and that through these last, man can attain unto godness, and women reign queen and equal. where she now serves as drudge, toy in legal and illegal, something worse. That woman, as such, has most of love crystallized within her, and for that reason is entitled to stand the peer of the best man breathing, God's free air, not by reason of her beauty, accomplishments, wealth, or any other accident, but because she hath the womb, the perfected laboratory wherein the fashioneth and alone completes what it took God, nature, and man singly and combined to only begin, and that too so badly that the wonder is that swarming hordes of murderers do not throng the world's highways where civilized man now walks. That was a long sentence. But so infinitely great an artist is she, from that the world worst of seed, she has raised many a splendid human tree, redeemed the race from savagery, fostered and cultured art, science, religion, and all that renders earth habitable, and that too under all sorts of repressions and bad conditions, assuredly entitled her now to a chance of trying what she can do under favorable circumstances, who did so well under the bad, and we hold this to be the strongest argument for the real, quote, rights of women, unquote, ever made since the world began. And we advance it only as one of the external reasons we entertain, holding in reserve others as much stronger and more vogant than these. A chain capable is superior to a child's slender whipcord. We, the Brotherhood of Rosicrucians, or by whatever name the world chooses to call us, further hold that there are ethereal, spatial centers of love, power, force, energy, goodness, and for and of every kind, grade, species, and order of knowledge known to man, and whereof he knows not anything, and that it is not only possible to reach those centers and obtain those knowledges, but that it is achievable by a vast number who now drone and doze away life, die half ripe, and wake up when too late to find out what fools they had been, necessitating what it is not our present purpose to reveal. Oh man, I bet you that applies to lots of people. In this present instance, it only remains for the purpose of this declaration of principles to draw a belief comparison between our system and the very best that can be possibly truthfully be said of the very best of all other systems now extant anywhere. They are divided into two parts, one of which proceeds to totally ignore the body, mortifies the flesh, and renders life truly a semi-graveyard operation from birth to baptism, from that to death. Jeez. The other allows the utmost limit to lust and license to the elect, and roundly berates all others outside Mormonism, I don't know, perfectionism and Islamism, and contrasts them with their opposites in belief as the Shakers. But current systems, as a general thing, bend all their energies towards the salvation of men's souls, and in spending their time in trying to get souls into heaven, lose sight of the bodies, which practically may go to the other place. Of so little account are they. They believe in crucifying the flesh altogether, and generally affect that everything for the soul. They wholly lose sight of a fundamental principle of human nature, which is to take delight in doing the very thing it is sternly forbidden to. Yeah, well, we got plenty of examples of that, don't we? The people of a town might not, if let alone, leave its boundaries once in 10 years, but you just make a law that they shall not leave it, and that town will be empty in less than a single day. Human nature is strongly perverse, and this suggests the query that were churches and marriages based upon consent and attraction instead of what they are based on, there wouldn't be a hell on earth or anything or anywhere else in less than 100 brief years, brief to God and to immortal man. Churches and marriages exist as repressions, our system in expansion. They drive people to heaven cross lots over steep down gulfs of hell. We teach them to avoid all such. They drive mankind by everlasting gabble on the horrors of deformity. We draw them by appeals to the good, the true, and the beautiful. They concern themselves about mourning, we about joy. They about making the best of bad bargain, bearing life's crosses, abiding patiently till the end, and all that, while we teach people how to neutralize hells by wholesale, and the worst of them, too, married ones, and all through the white magic of love, will, and atheria. What teachers besides herself can give men and women all the information of the following list of practical points? Or where are they who even pretend to know how to instruct the people? The fact is, they know nothing of what they call magnetics, and in which we call etherics, of which they call will, which we call volante, of what they call by 1,000 names, we by the one right title, love. There are certain aims, qualities, forces, ends, energies, powers, abilities longed for vainly by untold millions of people, men and women, in English-speaking lands, which we know the road to, and are able to so direct the wayfarer in the paths, that, though he or she be a mere weakling, they cannot err therein. Of course we do not propose herein to state even a quarter part of our doctrines, nor the powers derivable, for that were to transcend our present intention, besides which many of them have already been given to the world through the works already published by P.B. Randolph. Still, it is deemed advisable to name a few, omitting such as are of a strictly domestic, social, magnetic, and ultra-recondite character. In the course of human life, millions sigh for the power of irresistibility, affecting an appulsion to draw or bring others to them for good ends, others, when far off, actually or sympathetically. Frustrating bad plans of others when such will prove a benefit, the precisely opposite to assist others by exerting the etheric forces of the soul, moral and other changes affected by will influence, though health changes. I'm sorry. Affected by will influence through health changes. Increasing the dynamic life force through the three principles, prolonging specific energy through the single breath force, Tyroclerism, ability to think clearly to a point and know it, relating to money dealings, losses, gains, and to forecast them, the grand secret of domestic happiness, the law of marital discord discovered, and its effectual antidotes and enormously powerful ones besides, among which is one not discovered by us, but the incalculable value to every wedded couple whose health or finances may not warrant too frequent family additions. And thus we strike a blow direct at the monster crime of the age, murder, red-handed, atrocious murder, that awful crime of abortion. This is the golden secret. What a vast throng of husbands and married women notoriously find home a hell for want of reciprocation, mutuality, sympathy, and domesticity, longing for death or anything else to mitigate or change the current horror. Now, none of these know as we do that one, power comes to the man through woman, who in turn imparts it to the man, that two, man can wholly modify woman's character and kindle the ice to a gentle flame, and three, that it lies in every unhappy woman's power to make or mar the best man living, that she is very often responsible for her own misery, as the power to resist the depletion effects of vampirism, disease, and thus engendered, and to wholly transform the nature of almost any man, no matter how brutal, inconsiderate, or careless. In this respect, we victoriously plant the white banner over the ramparts of the social world. Well, at least they're not, they're not leaving either side untouched here. In conclusion, one quote-unquote Baron Fisher averts that we were the laughingstock of Europe 200 years ago, which is not true, but would be no disgrace if it were so, for the world's best friends have ever been the laughingstock of fools, which accounts for the quote Baron's smiles and the Cambridge gentleman, quote-unquote, is said to have been denounced denounced us lately because we are, quote, are Urimists, unquote, Urimists, and attain to clairvoyance by means of magic mirrors that we have put forth a book on it, quote, seership, unquote, teaching others how to do the same. Yet that very man figures in that very book as a successful mirror seers and boasts that through it he reached a positive sight of soul utterly, transcending his loftiest previous conceptions, a clairvoyance scarcely second to any ever possessed by embodied human beings, and so infinitely superior to any producible by mere mesmerism that there is no comparison whatsoever, nor any of its dangers. We admit, and triumphantly too, that we do use magic, mirrors, and furthermore that we believe in the elixir of life, and that the human stay on earth can be prolonged a great deal beyond the storied 60 years and 10. Finally, having thus been forced to lift the veil, we are content to abide the issue and leave the event with God, well knowing that victory is ours. Rosicrucians never fail, for, end quote, these are the great old masters, these the men sublime, whose distinct footsteps echo down the corridors of the time, unquote. In this manifesto, reference is made to the elixir of life, and it is a well-known fact that one of the cardinal points of the Rosicrucian belief is that bodily life can be prolonged through the whole ages in two different ways. First, by means of the elixir of life, of which I may not speak here, as it is one of the secret doctrines of the inner temple and is never divulged to the profane, and the second is by the means of the mere will alone. This is now known as metaphysical sciences, and foremost by the teachers of metaphysics stand such men as Dr. Paul Tyner, Dr. J. Phelps, Count St. Vincent, and others. In the first case, beauty and youth accompany age, but in the second, age becomes apparent after a certain limit is reached. This later secret in the process was revealed by a degenerate Rosicrucian in 1605. And all students of medicine are aware that great capital was made of it in later times by a French physician named Asgil. This writer undertook to publicly demonstrate and teach the art of life prolonging, laying it down positively that man is literally immortal, or rather that any given man alive could, if he choose, to utterly laugh at and defy death, that he need not, if so disposed, ever die, if he used sufficient prudence and forcibly and constantly entered his will in that direction. That Asgil succeeded to a remarkable extent is well known, but thus far no one has been found who had, quote, sufficient prudence, unquote, and who, quote, forcibly and constantly exerted his will in that direction, unquote, and lived forever. Methinks that the flesh of Adam, after all, must return to Adam sooner or later, although I know that man can live thrice as long as he generally lives in this, our age of fantastic rushing after the dollar. Yep, the new religion, huh? The religion of money. The Second Rosicrucian Manifesto. In the year 1887, the work Reveillette by Dr. P.B. Randolph was published, and in this we find the Second Rosicrucian Manifesto. This is supposed to be the exoteric practice of the temple, but I would warn the reader that many of the things must not be taken literally, as they are meant esoterically. The Rosicrucians, who and what they are. Try. The Rosicrucians. Okay, number 1. The Rosicrucians are a body of good men in true working under the Grand Lodge Charter, deriving its power and authority from the imperial dome of the Third Supreme Temple of the Order, and the last, claiming justly to be the oldest association of men on earth, dating from the sinking of the New Atlantis Isle, nearly 10,000 years anterior to the days of Plato, and as a Grand Lodge having jurisdiction over the entire continent of North America and the islands of the sea. The Grand Lodge and Temple grants charters and dispensations to found or organize subsidiary lodges and temples anywhere within the limits of its jurisdictions. Number 2. All Rosicrucians are practical men who believe in progress, law, and order, and in self-improvement. They believe firmly that God helps those that help themselves, and they consequently adopt the motto of the order, try. Or the order of the word, try, and they believe that this little word of 3 letters may become a magnificent bridge over which a man may travel from bad to better and from better to best, from ignorance to knowledge, from poverty to wealth, and from weakness to power. Number 3, we constitute a large society in the world, and our ranks bid fair to largely swell in this land of practical men. There are hundreds of men of large culture, deep intuitions, and liberal minds who actually languish because they do not know each other. There being no organized body save our own, which invites such men to join its ranks and find the fellowship which such men of such minds need. In our lodges, such men find all they seek and more. In our weekly reunions, the rarest and best intellects are brought in contact, the best thoughts are elicited, and the truest human pleasure experienced. For as much as nothing impure, ignoble, mean, or unmanly is for an instant tolerated under any circumstances whatever, while on the contrary, every inducement is held out to encourage that all that is noble, good, true, beautiful, charitable, and manly, that too in a way totally unknown and unpracticed in any other order as association of men. Number 4, every known Rosicrucian is known, and this is the sworn brother of every other Rosicrucian the wide world over, and as such is bound to render all possible aid and comfort, except when aid would sanction crime or wrongdoing, or interfere with the demands of public justice, social order, decency, sound morals, or national prosperity and unity. In all things else, every Rosicrucian is bound to help another, so long as he can do it with a clear conscience, and not violate his honor, derogate from his personal dignity, or sully his own manhood. In all things worthy, one assists the other in sickness, sorrow, life, death, troubles, and trials of the world and society. Each man is eligible to 1, 2, or 3 degrees, and after once becoming a true Rosicrucian, it is next to impossible that he can ever afterwards come to want either for protection in all that is just, counsel in difficulty, food, raiment, shelter, and all true human sympathy, all of which is freely rendered as long as the man remains a worthy dweller in the temple. There's a little shout out to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth there. Thus the temple ensures its acolytes against want, mitigates their sorrow, and enhances their usefulness to themselves and the world, braces and sharpens their intellects, fires their emulation, encourages all manly efforts, assuages their grief, cultivates their hope, strengthens their self-reliance, self-respect, self-effort. It frowns on all wrongdoing, seeks to elevate man in his own esteem, it teaches due and royal respect to women, the laws, society, and the world. It promotes stability of character and makes votaries strive for manhood in big letters in the full true sense adopts try and excelsior as living, practical mottos. And thus, both directly and indirectly, does the Temple of Rosicrucians seek to increase the sum total of human happiness in the world within and without its walls. Number 5. Every man who pays an initiation fee and a monthly tax of $1, in return for which the member has the advantage of all the information the lodge may be able to procure in the shape of lectures, debates, books, scientific papers, models, experiments, and all the physical sciences, says essays on philosophy, etc. In addition to which he is allowed a sum varied from our $14 a week when sick, provided he needs such aid. He is visited, comforted, nursed, doctored, and should he die, the temple buries him, as a man in a Rosicrucian should be buried. If he dies an officer, and every man is eligible, his widow and children are properly cared for by the order. There's an asterisk. I'll read the asterisk. It is this part of the manifesto that has been taken literally by those who have founded so-called occult orders. There is usually an initiation fee and a monthly fee for printed or typewritten matter. These founders of such orders are either ignorant of the life of Rosicrucia, or they impose on the ignorance of the people who, not knowing where to find the door of true Rosicrucia, take these pseudo-orders for the genuine fraternity. There is no ceremonial initiation in true Rosary Cross. There are no initiation fees, nor are there monthly fees. Postage for the instructions may be required, but then the neophyte has developed far enough and is found fit. Rosicrucians' sacred and grand mysteries are imparted free without price. Number 6, continuing with the text. This order is a school of the highest and best knowledge the earth affords. It is unlike any and all others, for in addition to being a mutual protection society, it reaches out in far higher and nobler aims, only a few, very few, of which are alluded to in this handbook, which is merely printed to save much explanatory talk on the part of Rosicrucians who are being continually importuned for the information respecting the said order. All right, another asterisk. Oh, okay. I'll finish this part maybe. Nope. Okay. All right. So sorry guys, but apparently at the end of this asterisk continued. So let's see here. I apologize for the confusion. Developed far enough and it is found fit. Rosicrucians' sacred and grand mysteries are imparted free without price. So this is still about the cost of the dollar a month or whatever. There being no monthly or any other fees, it will be seen that there can be no sick benefits nor any funeral benefits. Rosicrucians is not material, it is spiritual. It is not an order, but a fraternity. There being no ceremony initiations, it will be seen at once that there can be no officers at that term, as that term is usually used. Although it stands to reason that there must be a Grand Master and teachers of the sublime system, let us hope that the foregoing will be a warning to those who might otherwise be imposed on by frauds who take some of the Rosicrucian writings literally for want of better knowledge, which are necessarily masked, as no Rosicrucian will, quote, cast pearl before swine, unquote. Okay, and then at the end of this one, which is merely printed to have, this order is a school of the highest and the best knowledge of the earth could afford, as unlike any blah, blah, blah. It reaches out in far higher and nobler aims, only to a few, very few of which are alluded to in this handbook, which is merely printed to say much explanatory talk on the part of Rosicrucians who are being continually importuned for the information respecting that said order. And now this this asterisk says, this is read between the lines, will at once show that it is to say that it is an answer to idle curiosity seekers, and that it is not an answer to the question concerning the fraternity of those who are really in earnest to enter as neophytes. There are many grand truths in this manifesto, but they are veiled, and the rest may be taken as a satire on the self-acclaimed knowledge of self-styled occultists and mystics and those representing themselves as founders of occult orders and initiators. Continuing with the text of Part 6. One of its main objectives is to be a school of men, to make more men more useful by rendering them stronger, more knowing, therefore wiser, therefore happier. As Rosicrucians, we recognize the immense value of sympathy, encouragement, emulation, and persistency. Nil mortalibus ardum est. There is no difficulty to him who truly wills. Whatever of God or great man has ever done may still be accomplished by you or I, my brother, if we only think so and set about in right good earnest and no mistake, try. We proclaim the omnipotence of will, and we declare practically and by our own achievements demonstrate the will of man to be a supreme and all-conquering force when once fairly brought into play. But this power is only negatively strong when exerted for merely the selfish or personal ends, when or whatever it is called into action for good ends. Nothing can withstand its force. Goodness is power, wherefore we take the best of care to cultivate the normal will, and thus render it a mighty and powerful engine for positive good. You cannot deceive a true Rosicrucian, for he soon learns how to read you through and through as if you were a man of glass, and he attains this power by becoming a Rosicrucian only, nor can it be had through any other means whatever. Okay, I don't disagree with you there, my friend. The Temple of Breach teaches its acolytes how to rebuild this regal faculty of the human soul, the will, how to strengthen, purify, expand, and intensify it. One of the first results observable after a man has become a true Rosicrucian is that his vanity grows smaller by degrees, and beautifully less, for the first thing he fully realizes is that all he knows would probably make quite a large book, but that all he does not know would make a book considerably larger, and he therefore sets himself to learn. I like that. Where there is a will, there is a way, and after getting rid of the self-conceit, the man finds himself increasing in mental stature by imperceptible gradations, and finds himself a learned man by a process which he cannot fairly comprehend, and one which is neither appreciated or known outside the temple. Again, I wouldn't agree on that necessarily. As consequence of traveling on this royal road to knowledge, the Rosicrucian learns to despise the weakness of wickedness, not by reason of any long-faced cant being poured into his ear, but because he finds out practically that manhood and virtue are safe investments, while badness or meanness won't pay. It is a universal testimony of all who have become the true Rosicrucians that within its within its symbolic walls, there is a deeply mysterious influence for good pervading its atmosphere, under which every man of the order becomes rapidly but normally individualized and intensified in character, manhood, and influence. Number 7, the doors of our lodges are never closed against the honest, honorable, or aspiring man, nor can any earthly potentate, no wielder of an empire's scepter, no wearer of a kingly crown, gain admission by reason of his eminence. For though he be a king, he may not be a man. A title far above all others on the earth, a title nobler than any other ever earned by mortals. We Rosicrucians are proud of our eminence, and justly so, for we are a brotherhood of men, and recognized manhood as the true kingship. Hence we honor that man highest who knows the most, and puts his knowledge to the highest and noblest uses, not only towards his brothers, but in any field in the world's great garden. For are not we all brethren? Indeed. Does not the one great God rule over and love us? Even so, no man can enter our doors by reason of his wealth, for riches, unless put to manly uses, are detrimental, bad, positively injurious. No man can enter our doors by reason of his fame, politics, or religion. The order has nothing to do with man's politics or religions, and it matters not what a man's creed is, so long as he is a man. The Baptist is welcome, but not as a Baptist. And so, with men of all other faiths, no religion, no faith, no politics can be discussed from our platform, nor will their introduction be tolerated one moment. We accept men of all creeds, except such as outrage decency, manhood, sound morals, and public order, such as free lovers, Mormons, and birds of that feather. Nor can any such persons enter our ranks, no matter who he may be or how high in fame or social place. No man is barred out of our temple by reason of his poverty, for physical beggars are often kings in mind. All we ask or seek for in a man is honor, honesty, and ambition to know more and be better. Usually the lodges of Rosicrucia meet once a week to hear lectures, exchange courtesies, thoughts, news, to listen to invited guests, debate questions in art, science, and philosophy, or to mutually inform and strengthen each other, to investigate any and all subjects of a proper nature, and to cultivate what that manly spirit and chivalric bearing which so well entitles their possessor to be called a man. These are a few of the good things of Rosicrucia. We seek no man, man seeks us. Our facilities for obtaining knowledge and information on all subjects are, as may well be conceived, unsurpassed, unequaled, Financially, we are satisfied. Temple of Rosicrucia never felt the pressure of an exhausted ex- exchequer and probably never will, but this last is the least commendable thing about the institution. Yet it uses money for good purposes and therefore has its chest supplied. All other essential information, being the order, can be obtained, quote, by trying, unquote. All right, that's the end of that part. The second real Rosicrucian manifesto, here we go. Second real manifesto to be issued in America appeared in 1897, complete in one issue of the quote unquote The Temple. While that magazine was edited and published by Dr. Paul Tyner, it was signed Rosicrucian by order of her who is nameless, unquote unquote. This is possibly one of the strongest and clearest manifestos that have ever been issued by the Grand Fraternity, and appears many years after the Freeman B. Dowd had written that masterly introduction to Dr. P.B. Randolph's book, quote, The Disembodied Dead, unquote, in which Randolph is named as the Grand Master of the Imperial Order of the Rosy Cross. The Rosy Cross. The origin of the Rosy Cross is known only to the oldest initiates of the order. I'll say this, guys. I had a sub who sent me something. I'm waiting on an email from him, or I should say from this person. Too late. I'm waiting an email to see, if it's okay for me to share it. But this, the oldest initiates of order, this might actually be very, very, very old. When I show you guys this picture, it's kind of be like, I don't know. It's when I saw it, I was like, yep, look at that. So, anyways, well, I'll show it to you soon, hopefully. The origin of the Rosy Cross is known only to the oldest initiates of the order. Its symbols are as ancient as the Egyptian mysteries, and its principles underlie all religions, ancient and modern. In modern times, the name of Christian Rosenkreuz, Robert Flood, and Francis Bacon have figured prominently in its literature, but historically there are a few exoteric landmarks of the order. Rosicrucian is spiritual, not material. Fraternity rather than an order. Its members are gathered from the east and the west, from among the lofty and the lowly, and the learned and the unlearned, wherever there are free souls and sympathetic and aspiring natures. It embraces all ages, races, climes, and reaches from the visible far into the invisible realms of being. Silence, secrecy, and unpretending good works are its characteristics, and one member may pass his life next door to another and neither be aware of the bond between them unless some stress of need draw the curtain aside. The law of silence is particularly emphasized obedience to the injunction to, quote, enter into the closet and shut the door, unquote, being imperative on all who would have access to the sources of power. Each age calls for the restatements of truth, especially adapted to its understanding and use, and the present age is no exception. That which was hidden from the ignorant and vicious under symbols and figures in the past is emerging from its outgrown shell so that he who runs may read. And that's kind of what we're doing on this channel. The veil of Isis has become a misty cloud destined to disappear in the broader light of the coming century, and while the Rosy Cross has its lodges, passwords, and signs, these external forms are regarded with indifference by the genuine Rosicrucian, who is aware that he can become a complete epitome of the order only through a development of its principles within himself. While the Rosy Cross has no creeds or dogmas to which the initiate must subscribe, there are certain principles which all true Rosicrucians accept. Among them is belief in the impartial fatherhood of God and the universal brotherhood of man, thus recognizing the unity of spirit in all manifestations of life. Reincarnation is generally accepted as truth, and salvation is the freedom of the soul from successive embodiments in earthly forms, wherein pain and pleasure alternate, where the glow of genius is dimmed by the darkening understanding of age, and the flame of passion is quenched by the chill of disease and death. Humanity desires happiness, but none ever fully attains it because it is sought in individual conditions and possessions, while it can be gained only through the uplifting of all souls everywhere. Life is homogeneous, and perfect rest will come to the individual soul only when the soul of the race is at rest. Therefore, whatever makes for the kingdom of heaven among men is the way to happiness for the individual. Men and women are born free and equal, but each one comes immediately into conditions destructive of freedom and equality, conditions which man himself has created in the evolutionary process of thought and life. He binds himself with creeds, forms, and codes of action which divides man from man, create the iron bondage of caste, and limit freedom of thought by fear. Wow. I would say that's a pretty true statement. The recognition of the universal brotherhood and of the truth that all entitled to equal rights and privileges in the house of the common father and mother is an important step in the path the soul must travel towards the perfected life. The cult of the Rosy Cross embraces the culture of the whole man, and this carried on through vibrations set up in the emotional or soul nature by the will. These vibrations exalt and expand the energies of the soul, and this culture is the work of salvation, which is not freedom from consequences, but deliverance from evil desires and tendencies. That which is recorded cannot be erased, but a new record may be made which will cast the old into limbo or of forgotten things. Ooh, that's a great point. The past belongs to God with all its failures and sins, and the future is man's to mold and fashion as he wills for himself for the race, and for the race. Vibrations may be indefinitely transferred by oral or mental suggestion, and the instructed soul consciously arouses, excites, and directs the thoughtless and ignorant through vibrations. Ignorance unguards the soul, furnishing conditions of receptivity to good or evil suggestions, which uplifts or degrade. Mind responds to mind, soul to soul, spirit to spirit through vibrations in the other. Yeah, well, keep that in mind, guys. This is why masses of people can be swayed in one direction or the other, politically, religiously, whatever. This is why I have a lot of empathy for people, because a lot of people have no idea that they are in their own little mental prisons and given to them by the society in which they grew up in. The invisible world of spirit is drawing near to the earth plane, and the souls of men respond wherever they are sensitive to etheric vibrations. The Rosy Cross has long sensed this incoming spiritual tide and confidently expects the breaking away of the clouds of ignorance which have long obscured the light of the inner heavens. The pyramids, the buried cities, the tombs and mountains retreats of the old world are giving up their long hoarded secrets to the push and enterprise of the age, but their wealth of knowledge and wisdom, though grand and wonderful, sink into insignificance when compared with the treasures of the kingdom concealed in the soul of man, ready to be revealed for use. This is the kingdom of heaven, which is taken by force, the force of persistent desire and effort. Thoughts are not things. Ooh. They are greater than things. Thought is the energy, the inherent force of things, and comes from the primal intelligence from which is above and beyond all things. The mind is an instrument manipulated by unseen but not altogether unknown forces. Its energies do not belong to us, they are lent for use, and the only merit which we can claim because of our superior adaptability of the instrument is in the quality of their use. Wow, that's the power to project this force or energy of the soul is inherent in human nature, and one department of the Rosy Cross culture is devoted to instruction and training in its use. To vibrate the etheric atoms of the body is to set in motion the ether of space. To exercise the will in breathing is to connect with the space of will, charging the body with electricity, power, and life. But the fervent desire to attain any condition sets in vibration the finer essences of spirit that connect with the love soul of the universe, the infinite love. Every aspiring soul reaches some plane in spirit that corresponds to itself and which it can absorb and use. There are 7 spaces or spirit corresponding to the 7 great powers, 4 mundane, 3 spiritual or psychic. Those corresponding to the mundane powers are mineral, vegetable, animal, human. The spiritual spaces are faith, will, and love. All spaces are filled with societies, orders, associations, brotherhoods, which correspond to every condition possible to man. Connection with the beings inhabiting these spaces may be attained by systematic training and effort. This is not mediumship, so called, but the entering into the possession of knowledge and power of the spaces contacted. Man, body, and soul is the temple of the infinite spirit, and in him are ethereal atoms belonging to all spiritual states and spaces, some active, some latent. Those which are active connect to the individual with the spaces with which he has the closest affinity, and the influx from it's largely unconscious. Okay, and the influx from it is largely unconscious. Sorry. To illustrate, Beethoven was by nature affiliated with the musical societies, and being a fine instrument attuned to the inspirations of that space, he holds the world entranced by superhuman melodies. Socrates contacted the philosophical space, Napoleon the strategic. But the full soul of the prophet of Galilee came forth from and breathed the inspiration of the most interior space, the space of love. Okay, so there's a little asterisk here after Napoleon the strategic. And okay, see the philosophy of fire and the beautiful philosophy of initiation. All right. To aspire is to become in time and in eternity, for aspiration connects the soul with spaces of spirit vibrating with immortal energies. Man makes and unmakes himself. Quote, he fails, sickens, and dies through feebleness of will, unquote. Physical life is only a series of vibrations whose intensity may be greatly increased by the persistent use of spiritual forces. Degrees of soul force depend on the rapidity of the vibrations of the flame uniting the three powers which constitute the human ego. The trinity of intelligence, will, and love is a manifestation of the divine trinity in unity, making of a man a microcosmic God. The soul is a glowing spark in an infinite flame. So, you guys get that? They're telling you that your soul is part of a larger infinite flame, a larger being, a larger thing. The vibrations of these triune forces help or develop heat, which is generally diffused through the body as a gentle warmth. This heat may be powerfully increased and drawn to a center in the breast where it burns with a pure and conscious flame. This is the baptism with fire and the Holy Ghost, Geist, Spirit, and is typified by the fire kept burning on the altars of the ancient temples. It is also the transmuting force of the Rosicrucian, which certain of the old alchemists misunderstood and materialized to mean the transmutation of the baser metals into gold. This flame in the breast is evident of the Christ union, the seal of immortality, and it is possible only to the pure in heart. To the impure and unholy, the increase of spirit vibrations fill the soul with unquenchable thirst and an insatiable hunger which destroys soul and body by a slow combustion of unrest, impure desires, disease, and death. This flame is the point of contact with the source of all power and knowledge, and sometimes it finds a voice. With Moses, objectified in the form of a burning bush, and the, quote, still small voice, unquote, of spirit became audible to the external ear. Referring to this flame, the great Persian sage Zoroaster says, quote, when you see the fire, listen to the voice of the fire, unquote. Oh, interesting. This inner fire burned with conscious power when the disciples walked with the risen Jesus on the way to Emmaus, quote, did not our hearts burn within us, while he spake to us on the way, unquote. It has well nigh ceased to burn on the altars of human hearts, but the rosy cross has preserved a spark of it, and now calls to the wise virgins, whose lamps are trimmed and burning, to unveil the light for the illumination of the world. Love is the only antidote for evil. Forces will suppress. Love is the only antidote for evil. Force will suppress, but will not prevent it. The peaceful, gentle, forgiving vibrations of love open the invisible spaces from which descends purifying and regenerative power. I want to reiterate that sentence. The peaceful, gentle, forgiving vibrations of love open the invisible spaces from which descends purifying and regenerative power. Remember that sentence, you guys. Through the vibrations of love, war will cease, crime and its vindictive punishments will pass away, and practical help will supersede sermons, prayers, and the legal restraints with which society now ignorantly strives to protect itself. Crime should be prevented rather than punished, crime tendencies detected, undermined, and destroyed, and the transmission of criminal instincts rendered impossible. All this may be done through spiritual vibrations, and this is one of the fields of work which especially engages the intentions and efforts of the Rosy Cross. I'm just going to stop real quick and just mention the fact that you look around at our media, at the music, at movies, at all kinds of things, and it basically is telling you the opposite to what they're telling you here. You know, there's a lot of things that take crime and make it as if it's a good thing. You know, people love to be gangsters and whatnot and all these other things. And it's just like, why would that be something that you would aspire to if it wasn't something that was absolutely constantly thrown in your face in a packaged way? And just so you guys understand, like, these people who are controlling this world, they understand a good portion of what this stuff is talking about, but they're using it the opposite way. And understanding yourself and knowing thyself helps you to see through them and see through all of it, like they said earlier, like a man made out of glass. So I just wanted to make that point. Continuing, the concentration of effort and the union of many minds in one vibration creates society, sex, governments on the plane of its action. In the same way, spirit by projection creates and destroys. And another point on this one, this part here, this is why you have think tanks. Okay? I just want to point that out. Think tanks were created a long time ago, and they're created on this knowledge, and they're used for purposes that aren't good purposes, but because they know that many minds in one vibration create society, sex, governments on the plane of its action. Okay, so I just and I know that for a fact. The think tanks were created out of this. I could probably share that with you at some point, but yes. Continuing though. Spirit individualized in a human body is no less spirit than when disrobed. There is no conclaves in the spaces of spirit in which the souls of men and women who are still of the mundane world take part equally with those who have cast off the body. Convocations are held when the interests of earth life are presented by those in earth bodies who, in soul projection, are in the spiritual spaces, and the questions touching human interest most nearly are considered. Such a convention, giving exclusive attention to the application of the great principles of sex, has long been in session. It has removed the ban of silence from woman, and caused her equally with man to be recognized in many ways. But the projection of this truth onto the external world has been difficult, owing to the prejudices and superstitions of men. Rosicrucians invites women's cooperation and has made her eligible to its counsels and helpful influences on the same terms as her brothers. It now boldly proclaims the feminine principle as embodied in woman to be the savior of the race. Being the most spiritual, she is the vibratory center between God and man. Through her, and by the way, in old theology, the Holy Spirit is also connected with Mary, the Mother of God. So understand that that's an old idea. Through her, elevation is thought, will, and love of man. The influx of crime, lust, and disease from the lowest hells will be checked, and the incarnations of lofty, pure souls will be facilitated. This can only be accomplished by the cooperation of the visible world of souls with the invisible. Sex is of the body, soul, and spirit, and is as eternal as the creative power, for by, through its principles, all thing exists. Its activities are always creative, for a generation on one plane creates another plane similar but a little higher. Vibrations of the body are the result of vibrations of the spirit which they involve, and all vibrations are creative in accordance with their plane of activity. Sound vibrations reach the ear, thought vibrations the mind, but the powerful and the far-reaching vibrations of emotion move soul, and the motion is infinitely sustained. Love is the creative center, and the vibrations that harmonize the conditions, interior or exterior, of each individual are generated at the center. It is the love of one, not of many, for all sincere and genuine Rosicrucians are monogamous. Love in the physical has its correspondence in the spiritual nature. It is one, for love is spirit, and all its vibrations are creative. What we name matter is an effect produced by spirit transforming itself through vibratory motion. Nature makes no mistakes. She is the word of God, to which nothing can be added or taken away from by man except by his own hurt. The separations of the masculine and feminine in thought, emotion, or physical life is destructive, not constructive. In their perfect blending on all planes lies the secret of power, and the lost word is unity, one. So, I mean, I hope you guys are picking up on this as well. It's interesting that the current form of what seems to be crazy feminism or fourth wave feminism has lost this idea of unity because a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of hate coming out of that. You know what I mean? And that's something that's always kind of bothered me. If you're looking to be an equal in society, then I think love and unity in that is probably going to be better for you than hating people. And I think that's a huge issue in general in all society. You know what I mean? Like, look at the politics that are going around, especially in the United States. It's reached the level of absolute ridiculousness. Anyways, continuing, the natural use of the organs of the body as of the faculties of the mind and powers of the soul is an interpretive duty to all who would perfect the human nature. The orderly exercise of mind and will is required to preserve the harmonious balance of being so that life on all planes shall march together in orderly sequence. To be self-poised and perfect in rhythmic motion like the words swinging in space is the prerogative of every human being, but only those who have found the center and lighted the flame on that altar approach that condition. It is not attained by ignoring the selfhood or in disuse of the functions of body or mind. The rose cross makes no noise, it loves the infinite silence and works through vibrations of thought, will, and love. It is ready to point out the path and to clasp hands with any who desire to work for the advent of the new civilization. To this end, fraternity desires souls rather than money, earnest, active, sincere students and workers. Not all who knock can enter, but before one can become a member of the visible fraternity, he or she has already enrolled themselves, the invisibles. Quote, not everyone who saith the Lord, Lord, can enter into the kingdom, saith the Christ. And one before him affirmed, quote, many are the wand bearers, but few are the true bacchanals. Unquote. There's another big clue, guys. So, yep, I'm going to be spending some time connecting some of these older religions to Christianity and Judaism as well. But this right here is a very big clue. Those who can recall the conditions of life 50 years ago will appreciate the gigantic strides man has made along the lines of progress. The twilight of the stagecoach has brought into the noonday of steam and electricity. The inspiration of books has largely given a place to scientific certainties, the ascertained truth and facts of things, thus widening and deepening the scope of free thought. Dr. Franklin ushered in a new age, the age of electricity, when he called forth a message from the shadow of God which pronounced the death sentence on the limitation of matter, annihilating time and space by putting the, quote, a girdle around the earth in 40 minutes, unquote, as prophesied by Shakespeare's tricky sprite. As the age of crude force measured into the electrical age, bringing with it everything worth preserving, so the wires and dynamos and circuits which now witness to the external activities of man's restless intelligence will give place to the simpler methods of the mental age. When the possibilities of mind will become manifest, the present laborious processes of education will become obsolete, and telepathy will take the place of the old, cumbrous methods of instruction in the imparting of knowledge. Daguerre pictured the outside of things 50 years ago. Modern photography reproduces the inside, and it is only a question of a little more time and a few more experiments with mental states will be photographed, and man's nature will be mapped out as physical geography maps the surface of the planet. Okay? The swamps and lagoons in human nature will send up the malaria that generates crime, disease, and death will be located, as will the life-giving seas and breezy moral mountaintops. Mind will be generated rather than adipose tissue, and God will be enthroned in the heart of the world rather than in some far-off anachronistic city of gold. Speed characterizes the electrical age. Let us move quickly to help God save the world. He demands only the sacrifices of meanness, of enmity to our brothers, man's, and this the only bar to infinite progress. I agree with that 100%. No one can borrow that's the only sacrifice demanded by any God right here. Okay? No one can borrow the light of the Spirit. Each virginal lamp must shine by its own light, and each man stands or falls alone. God helps those who help themselves. His tables are laden with flowers and fruits which are not forced on anyone. The command is, quote, help yourself, unquote. And there you go. I guess that's what the real meaning of God helps those who help themselves really means. Recognizing the value of organization for a certain work which is before us, the Western cult of the Rosy Cross has established a Bureau of Instructions where those who desire to learn and work with fraternity may apply. Okay. Where are we at here? 176. Third Rosicrucian Manifesto. I gotta just check to see how long I've been going here, you guys. Give me a second. Yep, looks like it's good. And I've been going for an hour. Okay. Um, let's see here. Okay, so if you guys bear with me, um, I usually have to do this once or twice depending on the length of the book I'm reading, but nature calls really quickly for me. So, and I got to go take care of something else and refill my drink here. So, give me about 5 minutes, and I will be back, and we will continue reading. What's the part we're reading again? The next part's going to be the third Rosicrucian Manifesto. So, I'll put in a little music for you, and then I will be back as soon as earthly possible. And we're back. Take the break sign off. Hello. Someone in our chat says inequality they speak of is certainly counter to the narrative they are pushing these days of inclusivity in all things and places. I agree with that. Definitely not from a non-egotistical source. So I'm going to share the screen here. Right there you go. Okay. So continuing. The Third Rosicrucian Manifesto from a little booklet, quote, The Rosicrucians, unquote, by Freeman B. Dowd, of whom Dr. P.B. Randolph spoke as being one of the peerless trio, I take the following, as it will explain much that has seemed veiled before. Quote, the Rosicrucians may more properly be termed a fraternity than an order, though many attempts have been made in modern times to materialize it as an order, some of which are a success, though of necessity veiled in profound secrecy. The Rosicrucians are numerous, of all nationalities and all climes, but they are scattered. They meet occasionally, not drawn together by, quote, press notices, unquote, or the ringing of bells, but by the moving and drawing of the spirit as, quote, of one accord, unquote. They are known in history among the other appellations of the Essenes, the Illuminati, etc., and they don't mean the Bavarian Illuminati, by the way. But since Christian Rosenkreuz's time as the Rosicrucians, it was evidently once the universal religion, long ere written history began, for evidences of fire worship are scattered all over the earth in the form of Rosicrucian symbols. See the philosophy of fire. And you guys can find that reading of the book in our channel. The curious reader is referred to Hargrave Jennings' great work entitled, quote, The Rosicrucians, unquote, published in England. There was a time when all learned men believed in magic, another term for magnetism. And those who studied the occult forces of nature and practiced the power derived therefrom were styled priests and later magicians. But after the destruction of the Magi of Persia and during the rise of Catholicism, magic became associated with the idea of diabolism and was styled, quote, black art, and all who practiced it were shunned and sometimes hunted to death. Yep, we're going to get into that in future videos. Wherever God is found among men, you will find a spirit of investigation into the mysteries of being and corresponding love of freedom. Hence, the true man is free to take intellectual flights, aye, even to God's throne, and there question him face to face. There is nothing too sacred or secret for him to question for the truth. Indeed, recognizing that the possibility of the great good God and the impossibility of the devil, they laughed in secret, for they dared not even smile publicly at priests, bishops, cardinals, and popes, and treasured the ancient lore in cipher, worshipping the undying, unquenchable fire while they dwelt in caves or fled before the terrors of the Inquisition. This revived the ancient pagan secret societies and mysteries. And I hope you guys paid attention to that part, and the impossibility of the devil. To learn to know something more than ordinary is dangerous when such knowledge is unpopular, or at least when the masses are ruled by ignorance and superstition. It was at the cost of life to be known as a member of such secret orders, hence across the proverbial secrecy of the Brethren of the Rosy Cross. Time was when no man would admit that he belonged to the mystic fraternity. Furthermore, they shrouded themselves in a cloud of mysteries, not perhaps with a view of mystifying others so much as from the idea that all power is a mystery and that, quote, God's ways are mysterious and past finding out, quote, unquote. They wish to be godlike. Furthermore, Rosicrucians have learned from past experience that popularity is a dangerous thing. Upon this rock, all religious systems have foundered. That's true. The Magi of Egypt, Arabia, Persia, and Assyria in the ancient times were the ruling class. They were the priesthood and ruled the crowned heads and had charge of the education of such as were eligible thereto. They recognized that the equality of man was based in his elevation and that undeveloped man must of necessity be ruled. To such as are not capable of self-government, intellectual education is an evil. They knew, as we know today, that the only true education is of the heart. Yep. To attain this end, they established religious systems, and the common people were taught as children are taught, with stories or fables, while the priests kept for their own use ideas altogether different. Their ideas expressed as allegories entered into and became the foundations of quite all the religious systems of the civilized world. From the ancients came all the symbolism of the world. It is woven into art, customs, literature, and science, as well as the religious systems. Our Bible is full of Rosicrucian lore, not, however, known under that name at at that or any other time, for Rosicrucians has little respect for names, while at all times leading the world, it assumes names to suit circumstances and of itself is hidden and not known. Why? Because it is a spiritual organization, if it can be called such, and works wholly in spirit. Its method are not the world's methods to worship fire, but this fire is not material fire, says one of the Bible's prophets. Quote, our God is a consuming fire, unquote. All thrones and crowns grew out of popularity, and now the masses have turned upon them, and their days are numbered. Where are the ancient magi? Gone with the grandeur of the countries wherein they flourished. The very circumstances they created overwhelmed them, and they have sunk to rise no more. The fate of all nations and religions is the same. Still, the Rosy Cross principles remain and keep along with the people, unseen but not unfelt. Another reason for secrecy is this: the most potent forces of nature are silent and secret. They manifest themselves openly at times, but are mainly hidden. Behold the earthquake and the cyclone. Think you there is no power in silence? Kind of reminds me of the whole idea of, what do they call that? The butterfly effect? Rosicrucians is intensely and transcendently spiritual, hence it has nothing in common with materialism except intellectually, and even then the conclusions of materialism are all reversed. It has no affinity with this mammon worshipping age. Hence, it has no golden basis or, quote, insurance plan, unquote, to lure men into semblance of brotherly love and fellowship. Unobtrusive, unpretending men, they pass mainly unnoticed through life. They look with pity upon a world of gold and treasure gatherers as upon children heaping dirt in the streets. No wonder such men are not understood. They are in the world, but they feel they are not of it, and they wish to get done with it as quietly as possible. Knowing that they can leave it only by doing good, they are always secretly doing all within their power. Indeed, they are conscious of having been sent here for that purpose, to help the world in its efforts to humanize the race. The alchemists of the Middle Ages believed that the, quote, elixir of life and the philosopher's stone, unquote, and diligently sought for them. To drink of the former was eternal youth and life. The latter was sought as a universal solvent, in the use of which the baser metals were changed or transmuted into pure virgin gold. No wonder these men were called insane, but nevertheless they gave the world the principles of chemistry and medicine. Think you such men were fools? Nay, but they had an idea which the masses could not comprehend, and they massed it in a material that they could grasp. No philosopher ever supposed for a moment that matter in any form could confer immortality upon any other form of whatever, for there is no changeless substance in existence. That there is a power in the human soul capable of eternal renewing youth and beauty is a cardinal doctrine of the Rosy Cross. As to the transmutation of metals, it is not only possible but true. The idea is of akin to the first. They constitute the secret of the order, and has already been explained as transmutation of spirits into forms of matter, such as cloth, flowers, bread, wine, or any metal. The Rosicrucian concealed the real idea of transmutation under the title of transmutation of metals, or the changing of one form into another. Many alchemists tried to reduce the spiritual gift of creation into a material science, and it is said some few succeeded so far as they were individually concerned. But the true Rosicrucian, the later is of no value whatever. Further than as used in the Middle Ages as an excuse to stop too close espionage and to compel not only the respect of common people but the patronage and protection of those in authority, for the practice of alchemy or dealing with this satanic majesty, quote unquote, for the purpose of enriching the earth with gold would be deemed a laudable avocation. They at least found protection in it, although prizing it not, for the true adept has all he needs of all things without resorting to any such resource, for he needs but little. There is a providence for every man and woman who stands high enough in the scale of being to be conscious of it and to be its recipients. The ravens fed the prophet Elijah in the olden time. Not every man can be an adept in anything, for this capability is born in a man as genius is. Neither is it possible for every man to be a Rosicrucian, no more than education can impart sense, or more than a child born blind can be made a master artist by learning the terms used to designate the philosophy of light and shade and blending of colors. There must be an innate feeling of rapture at the bare idea of mystery, a hunger and thirst for the unknown, and a conscious and abiding belief in one's own immortality. Indeed, there are initiated with profit to themselves and mankind, for in Rosicrucians' temple they eat and are filled with drink to thirst no more. We are the children of the shadow, and we love it, though oft we may not see the way clearly through tear-dimmed eyes. We Yet we cry out in our anguish, quote, "Not my will, Father, but thine be done," unquote. And then the shadow reveals its mysteries and departs, leaving the heart chastened and lightened with increased purity and peace. We are cast down in order that we may go higher. Thus, alternately cast down and exalted, we are prepared to meet all the changes of this mundane life. No stoic, agnostic, or egotist can be a Rosicrucian. It requires feeling, and that intensified. Without this, no initiation could possibly impart that baptism of the Spirit which gives birth to new or dormant energies, or awaken soul germs of a higher and better life, where will reigns over all and matter becomes transmutable. Who are Rosicrucians? I may not answer this question. Quote, "By their fruits shall ye know them," unquote. I will use that all the time, but you guys are going to hear me say that all the time because it is true. By their fruits shall ye know them. Keep that in mind. No better test or one more unerring or unmistakable could be given than that by our Master, the man of sorrow, whom they hanged on a cross long ago. Let others speak for themselves. There is nothing in Rosicrucian to be ashamed of, and I glory in being one, though an humble builder of the temple in these degenerate times. And if I speak of myself in this connection, it is because I am free to do so. While I may not mention others, it has been my lot to be a teacher most of my life. I write and speak to aid others, not to pay in coin or in popularity. Unfortunately, however, some fail to grasp ideas in their fullness and, carried away by enthusiasm, rush into occult studies and practices, expecting immediate results. Very good point. This is wrong. There must be a certain growth and ripening ere fruits can be expected. Exactly. Some seem to think that if they can find a lodge of Rosicrucians and be initiated, that they will come out with a diploma and become at once full-fledged Rosicrucian. Initiation is something more than taking an oath and going through certain forms and ceremonies, no matter how imposing or awe-inspiring. It is something more than a course of lectures and study of authorities. It is something deeper and lighter than intellectual culture. It is the knowing of truth. To know is something higher than learning. It involves mind, soul, and body. Ah, what a work this is. The life is far too short for some to attain the goal of knowledge. It is said that Pythagoras, a Phoenician, spent 22 years among the mysteries of Egypt in his initiation. Mind, however, deep and subtle, cannot bear immortal fruit. It takes the entire man, soul, mind, and body. The Rosicrucian think very little of the ways of the world, its pride, arrogance, and dignity. He is simple, for he finds truth very simple. The fruits of truth are free from pretense. But unfortunately, there are many pretenders and some knowing ones that assert, quote, "Whoever makes claim to being a Rosicrucian is a pretender and a fraud," unquote, and that no true initiate ever announces himself as such. I frankly admit that such used to be the case in the, quote, elden time, when men were afraid of the Inquisition. Behold Cagliostro, miserably perishing in a Catholic dungeon in Rome. Also the tortures inflicted upon Galileo for daring to think and express his thoughts. Such have been the facts. I would also add Giordano Bruno, who was burned in Rome as a as a message to these people, because he was definitely a part of this. And also, not long after he was burned in Rome, did the Rosenkreuz put out the very first manifesto. I just want to point that out. It has also been a fact that women were not admitted to membership in the Rosy Cross or other secret societies and were even denied a voice in the Christian church, but the world has outgrown such things, thank God. The Rosy Cross is not a fossil, nor is it even in the rear of progress. It has no creeds and issues no mandates. If the law of silence is enjoined, it is upon such as are not fully initiated, or whose voice is not fully formed. Women are now admitted upon equal terms with men. True initiate is free. The true initiate is free in all essentials, free to think and be and express himself for himself, always for the good of others and in the cause of progress. But by their fruits shall ye know them. But fruits are not always confined to acts. They are visible to the acute sense, even in the embryo, in the thought and in the spirit, as fruit may be known in a tree by its buds. I meet many Rosicrucians, and although total strangers, we know each other at sight. The true artist has a feeling which transcends his thought in viewing works of art. It is his best and safest guide to a just and true estimate of what he upholds. God fashions all things and paints them in all colors possible. There is nothing in existence that is not kin to intelligence. They are suggestive of thought. Nay, they are thoughts materialized, and he has fashioned men with thought reservoirs as a flower or for receiving the pollen and the dew, and the Rosicrucian may be known by the stamp that God has put upon him, whether he is conscious of it or not. Pre-existence is a cardinal principle of the Rosy Cross, and men who have existed on this earth previous to this existence as men have forms, expression, and motion more suggestive of peace, rest, and harmony than those who have only just commenced life on this planet. The former have more receptiveness, prescience, and intuition, for they have not wholly forgotten the lessons learned in other bodies. Neither have they entirely forgotten the friends and companions of that other life, and when they meet, they feel mutual attraction and friendship for each other, a kindred feeling more real than that of blood. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Excuse me. During my studies of nature and my travels as a lecturer and practitioner of phrenology and kindred sciences, I have met with many men and many strange and I might say weird experiences. I have looked into the eyes of all shades of colors that contain nothing but which reflected all phenomenon of the outer world. Other eyes I have met that looked deep, as into a world of causation without limit, as looking into an eternal past, and out of which rise up shadows not dark or many colored, but fiery, as it were, or of a burning, melting tenderness. Such shadows are potent of power. Of such are Rosicrucians. Many such have I taught the true principles of human life and action and sent them on their way rejoicing. Many a false step have I arrested and infused hope into the minds of the desperate, aye, and turned the would-be suicide into the way of love, labor, and usefulness. Ugh. So again, I'm not a Rosicrucian. I'm not any part of any of these societies or anything like that, but I've experienced this exact thing. Turn the would-be suicide into ways of love, labor, and usefulness. Ugh. The things that you can do for another person if you really just wake up and understand who you are is truly miraculous. That's all I'll say. I will share some of these personal stories with you guys in the future, but I want to get some of this to get laid down here, some of these concepts first. So, the evil is always too apparent in the young, the good is mainly hidden. To find the truly good in the soul and display it in the consciousness is to make it loved and followed as beacon of life. The will needs an incentive high and noble in order to its growth, and no matter how lofty one's own ideal of himself and his powers may be, to find them recognized by another in that of a stranger is like doubling the powers to its attainment. Alas, oh, how true is that? Alas, how many of the mature years are in doubt and condemnation of themselves because they are not and never have been understood, i.e., the best part of themselves. We long to have the good in ourselves understood and not the evil, and herein, knowing the good in ourselves, lies the whole secret of life, health, and happiness, both here and hereafter. This idea is the basic floor of the quote, mental science healing, unquote. And as I said, I reiterate, this is the leading school this day in philosophy in which the religion of Christ becomes real and practical. We are slowly turning back to the time when man has more faith in the gods than in the physical substances, and diseases were prevented and cured by the use of talismans, incantations, and words, thoughts, spells, charms, etc., all of which were forms of expression for that spiritual power of which I have spoken, having an effect upon the mind primarily and secondly upon the body. But man's spiritual nature has gradually become more and more dense or physical, and instead of carrying or wearing talismans, charms, etc., as a protection or cure, people now invoke the doctors instead of the gods and swallow their amulets whole at a gulp, and yet people die now as then, or as when Moses set up the brazen serpent in the wilderness. Gautama said that the most fatal diseases enter through the eye, and we of the Rosy Cross know this is true in a sense, for through the eye the imagination in most men is fed, and the passions may be aroused to the commission of acts unhallowed and unnatural, by the reason in which the soul is tainted with moral poison, which is the blood produces venereal diseases or infections, hereditary and deadly, the foundation of all known diseases. If diseases enter ever or in any form whatever through the eye, it cannot be removed by agents which act upon the physical or chemical organization only. For the reason it being of a spiritual or physical origin, it enters directly into and deranges the harmonious actions of the mind, which holds supreme control over the physical. To cure these phases of disease, the remedies applied must be of character that will influence directly the subtle spiritual forces of the individual, and through them produce vital and chemical changes in the physical structure. One of the books I'll be reading in the future will be one of Carl Jung's books about religions, East and West, and he definitely talks about this element here within psychotherapy and gives some examples from his own experience. So that'll be interesting. But disease does not enter in any manner from without. That which is external is simply awakens up that which is already in us. Disease, and if you break that down, is dis-ease, right? Disease is not a thing. It is simply a depolarization of the self. That sights and sounds lure imagination into activity. I claim, and in this faculty of the mind, depolarization of the spirit's action takes place, which causes a sudden condensation of spirit in some parts of the system, and to the damage of other parts left destitute. Thus, the system is all thrown out of harmony because the normal action of the spirit is disturbed. And kind of makes you wonder whether or not acupuncture is sort of the science of unblocking all these kinds of things. Now, belief being the fundamental principle of power, and man being more physical than mental, his belief is more readily aroused and sustained by the physical substances than by ideas. Hence, the Magi used charms, amulets, and talismans to inspire the beliefs of the ignorant and material. Furthermore, who can doubt for a moment that drugs, metals, vegetable substances, etc., have a peculiar affinity for certain spirits or an antipathy for others? Who knows why Dr. Hotchkiss had his room hung around and round with rags of all shades of color except blue? How interesting. Were these things talismans calling and binding magnetic spirits to himself, and thus strengthening him in the cure of diseases, and in the retaining of his youthful vigor and prolonging his life? Why did he fall into a towering rage and lose his magnetic power if one came dressed in blue into his room? Why did he fill his cellar with such a dense smoke so thick that no one but himself could endure it upon certain occasions? Don't tell me there is no truth in magic, for I know better. Still I care not who doubts it. The higher magic set forth in these pages is for the use of a higher order of mankind than this world is much acquainted with. Apollonius of Tyana was another who possessed magic power. He lived at the time of Jesus and, according to heathen history, performed as many miracles, cures as Jesus did. He lived mainly in the desert, preached and healed the sick by a word or a touch, and was clairvoyant. Of Christ I have already said enough. He was simply God incarnate. He gave us the purest doctrines of a true life and taught the superiority of man over the realms of disease and death, a true immortality on earth. He not only taught it by precept, but he lived it and died to illustrate and prove what he taught, vis-a-vis the power to render matter imperishable. And I will say this, that interestingly enough, there are some Christian-based ideas that claim that Jesus didn't feel any pain during the entire passion or the crucifixion as a example of how to conquer matter. Just throwing that out there. Maybe I'll get into that in a different video. But Gautama, Apollonius, Plato, Pythagoras, and a host of others taught pre-existence in a future life, but none but Jesus taught the demonstrated immortality in the flesh. He was the only begotten Son of God, or love, not that there are no other sons of God, but he is the only one begotten of a woman. Buddha says that a man strong spiritually can impregnate a very sensitive and pure woman by the manipulation of his hand over the umbilicus. Interesting. This, by the greatest sage and philosopher of any time, must have weight with every true thinking man, especially when corroborated by modern developments. If this assertion be true, and one in the form can be magnetic touch produce pregnancy without copulation, how much less wonderful the idea contained in the New Testament of the Immaculate Conception becomes. An angel, by his presence, without even contact by word spoken, quickens the procreative powers of a virgin. An idea, no matter how suggestive, is all that is required. These bodies are mere receptacles of the spirit, as well as it is for us when the spirit flowing in us is divine instead of devilish. Modern materialization, the overflowing of hospitals with the insane, the obsessions that stalk the streets of the world unseen and seen, prove the above to be true. Ideas are all that can do us good or be of any harm spiritually, for they enter in, having been conceived, gestate, personify themselves within us. This is true. In this domain, the procreative functions are involved, and ideas of love become paramount. Human love is a magnetic effect, but the why and the wherefore has never yet been satisfactorily explained. But it is simple enough to one of comprehension. All things are male and female, and the sense that distinguishes the individual is the active or visible expression, while the negative or invisible half is mainly latent or manifests itself ideally. Thus, everyone of any sensibility has an ideal of one of the opposite sex that they imagine suits them, and when they see one who corresponds hereto, they are attracted. We love only that which corresponds to some invisible and unknown being within ourselves, and they in whom this idea is well defined and strong seldom or never love a second time. Some people are double, i.e., under some circumstances, the ideal goes forth clothed in flesh exactly like the person who is partially or wholly unconscious at that time. Magnetism quickens and accelerates the development of the counterpart. This explains why some people are more susceptible to magnetism than others, and explains to a certain extent trance mediumship and the resemblance that has been noted sometimes between medium and materialized form. In marriage, the parties too often awaken to the realization that there is little or no correspondence between the wedded parties and that their ideal. This makes them unhappy and often checks the growth of the ideal, or in some cases drives it totally out of recognition. They cease to magnetize each other, hence they cease to love. This is this is prostitution, in which there is no ideal and no worship of the one true and only God. This ideal, in some rare cases, comes to life in the individual, i.e., it comes to close to the it comes so close to the consciousness of the individual as to be heard, to speak in plain language within the person, of course, unheard by outsiders. Not only this, but the time comes speedily when from many the counterpart shall come forth on an objective being, as Eve came forth from the side of Adam. Recollect, Adam was in a deep sleep when the rib was extracted. In other words, he was an extraordinary materializing medium, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, was another more remarkable still. I am not without evidence of these things in actual existence even now in this degenerate and unbelieving age. If marriage was as it should be and will be, we should have angels walking the earth. We believe in angels. Then cultivate your ideal love. Love and only one of the opposite sex. Love only one of the opposite sex, and let your soul, mind, and body rest. Keep before your mind's eye the radiant images that crossed your path and lure you to marriage in life's young dream. And let no changes, nor wrinkles, nor gray hairs glide between your youthful counterpart and you on life's rough voyage. So may you remain young and full of love and joy. And on that, I'll just say that my grandfather is 95 years old. My grandfather is 90 years old, or going to be 90 years old next year. They're still married. They were married in 1944. So it's not impossible, guys. And my grandparents aren't religious at all. We do not have to depend upon churches and lodges for initiation into the grandest mysteries of God, for the heavens are open, and in the spaces above are countless multitudes that with thought and act are baptizing earth with all you are capable of receiving. Then arise in your thought and meet them. We of the Rosy Cross believe in the quote, the double, unquote, in dreams and visions. We hold that the soul goes out of the body, sometimes in sleep or trance, or in very rare cases by an effort of the will. That when out it is enveloped by the spirit, of which it sometimes forms an exact counterpart of the body it has left, and journeys to other worlds or other parts of this one. Mingles and holds converse with other beings when it is enlightened in many ways, and often the future is shown to it by symbols, but these things are mainly lost when the soul resumes its body, or remembers vaguely as dreams. Sometimes some little thing we recall something learned in this manner, and we are astonished at what we supposed are our own thoughts. Many persons are instructed in this manner. Oh, interesting. So, pay attention to your dreams, guys. The Fourth Rosicrucian Manifesto. Fourth Rosicrucian Manifesto. This manifesto concerning the Rosicrucian fraternity appeared in the, quote, Herald of the Golden Age, unquote, published at the Pangton, England, by Sidney H. Beard, Esquire. This appeared in 1901, and as it is the only statement to appear in England for many years, it is of great value. Dr. Beard says, in consequence of the increasing interest which is being manifested by seekers after truth concerning the somewhat mysterious fraternity known as the Rosicrucians, and because many societies are springing up in various parts of the world which claim connection with them, often for selling occult books at exorbitant prices, some information concerning the Order of the Rosy Cross may possibly be appreciated, and therefore I venture to state some facts that are not generally known. In the first place, I will mention that certain misapprehensions which exist, the chief of which is to the effect that the road to initiation in this ancient brotherhood lies through Freemasonry. Masonic manuals teach that after passing through 32 degrees of stages of progress in Masonic lore, aspirants can be initiated into what is known the 33rd or ne plus ultra degree, that of the Rosicrucians, the ceremonials and symbolism of which are of the most sacred description because they have been, to a large extent, borrowed from the genuine Rosicrucian mysteries. Masonry has no vital connection with Rosicrucian fraternity, for a man might possess through the Masonic degrees and yet know but little about the spirit which denominates the true Rosicrucian. Rosicrucians are not made by passing through ceremonies or by studying symbolic manuals and recognize each other by surer signs than secret grips and passwords. Any man may become a Mason, but not one man in 100 can become a Rosicrucian. Material wealth will buy the highest honors in Masonry, but in Rosicrucian fraternity, spiritual wealth alone wins for its possessor and the honor and esteem of the brethren. Freemasons lay much stress upon rituals and attach much importance to occupying the chief seats at their feasts, but in the order of the Rosicross it is not so. For he that would be great seeks to become the servant of all, and the ministering spirit is more earnestly desired than any title. Another popular fallacy, if I may judge by the advertisements which are to be seen appearing in certain journals in America and elsewhere, is to the effect that Rosicrucians sell their secrets and are prepared to initiate any person into the mysteries for a considerable consideration in cash. The gullibility of the public causes such advertisements to appear, and those who see them may take my word for it that they are issued by persons who not only are unconnected with the fraternity Rosicrucis, but are ignorant of its spirit and modus operandi. True Rosicrucians do not sell the priceless gems of truth which have been revealed to them. They give them without money and without price to those who are able to receive them and are able to profit by them. And then there's an asterisk, and I will read the asterisk. There are to my knowledge, three so-called occult orders in America who claim that they confer the degree of Rosicrucis on the initiates. The degree consists of ceremonies and rituals in each case. No preparatory development is required, and all that is necessary is to have the amount of cash required to first take the several primary degrees and then the degrees Rosicrucis. It is not even necessary to develop the inner being before taking the first degrees in these orders, as all can be had. From the first degree to the last, oh, this is going to be long, guys, sorry. From the first degree to the last, by paying the necessary fee and passing through ceremonies. In true Rosicrucianism, there is no ceremony and no ritualism. The neophyte must go through the initiation himself. He may be given a chart that shows him the way, but the work is left for him to do. No one can do it for him. It is safe to say that none of the leaders of these so-called occult orders ever belonged to the fraternity of the Rosicross, and in speaking of this fraternity, one of these leaders says, "There is no Rosicrucian order today. There are no more Rosicrucians now as in the time when Lord Lytton lived. The true Rosicrucians have passed away and are no more. After investigation, it was found that several of these leaders had knocked at the Rosicrucians' door, had been tried and found wanting, and it was then that they started an order of their own, claiming their home as India, Egypt, Paris, and other places, and giving their students supposed instructions in mystic lore, and had them pass through several degrees, among them the degree of Rosicrucis. It is never thus. Where God builds a temple, Old Nick is sure to have a chapel near, and nearly always it will be found that it is such as were not fit to enter the temple that institute a sham order with imposing ceremonies, and it is these that Dr. Hartman called pseudo-Rosicrucians." Okay. Thank you for that distinction, sir. All right, continuing. In the past centuries, and especially in the Middle Ages, when freedom of speech or thought were often considered to be capital offenses, the members of the Brotherhood were compelled for purposes of self-protection to surround themselves with mystery and secrecy. Hence the idea that they were alchemists digging after the philosopher's stones and the elixir of life, and because we have but scantly historic record of them after we get back some few hundred years into the past, the notion exists that they only came into being during the modern times. This is incorrect, for Rosicrucians have lived and carried out their life work in all ages in the world's history and in most parts of the planet. Lonely but majestic souls, they have in every land swayed the destinies of men and molded the world's future by their influence and their devotion to the highest ideals. Now, this brings me to the question about the Acadians, which Martin Liedtke has done a couple of videos on, because they seem to have a very, very interesting societal makeup that is very similar to what these Rosicrucians are talking about, and also the Cathars. The Cathars of southern France were all murdered, and these people were known to be extremely peaceful. They were known to be very spiritual, and they were also vegetarians, just like the Rosicrucians. And they were murdered by the thousands. They were burned, at the stake, all kinds of different things. And this is before, this is right around the time in the Middle Ages that they're talking about, where they had to go underground. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a whole video on the Cathars, because that is a very interesting moment in history and exposes the true nature of what the real Crusades were about. It wasn't about Jerusalem, not at all. The last misapprehension which I need mention is one to the effect that the Brotherhood is mixed up in some way with infidelity or with anti-Christian tenets. This is a preposterous fallacy, for the Rosicrucians are devout seekers after God, and they are not only regard Jesus of Nazareth as their great exemplar and teacher, but speak of him as the master in their assemblies. They also commemorate his great love and self-sacrifice by observing the sacramental feast he instituted for his followers, the wine and bread, which is a very old Phoenician custom. What matter of men are they? First, they are seekers after truth, aspirants after the highest wisdom attainable by mankind. They seek illumination not for their own sakes, but that they may be better qualified to serve God and humanity, and to help their fellow mortals in their struggle upwards toward the higher planes of consciousness. Unknown and unrecognized except by highly developed souls dwelling in the quote shadows cast by sin and suffering, voluntarily bearing a humble share of the burden and toil which the redemption of mankind from darkness and evil renders necessary on the part of the sons of God. Sons of God, okay? Which includes you guys. Sorrowful because of their sympathy with pain, yet always rejoicing, they will go their ways quietly and without ostentation, and with the single intent to make other souls better and happier. What of their much talked of secrets? They are such as the children of this world do not apprehend, but nevertheless they are much worth and preciousness, indwelling in abiding peace, overcoming and transforming power, clear vision that makes right perception of men, things, and eternal varieties of verities possible. Faith to do and dare and sacrifice, these are some of them. And those who win their way to the light that shines beyond the realm of the shadow are not far from illumination and realization. Mr. Beard does not make any claim of being one of the Brotherhood, but he does speak as one who knows. However, by their fruits shall ye know them, and we can only judge a man by his works. I have quoted Mr. Beard, Doctors Randolph, Dowd, and Hartman, because they are of the few who know, and their writings are of value, while many of the writings of others are worthless, being written from purely an intellectual understanding without any illumination. It will be well for those seeking the door of the temple of the Rosy Cross to avoid all such as claim to be of the fraternity, and who will initiate you by ceremonies and rituals, as Rosicrucius has nothing to do with either ceremonies or rituals. Believe no one who claims to represent an occult order which confers the degree of Rosicrucius among its other degrees, as there is not an order in existence that has anything to do with Rosicrucian fraternity, and consequently cannot confer such a degree, for the simple and only reason that there is not even such a ceremony degree in the Rosicrucian fraternity itself. Of course, no reference is here made to the 33rd degree of Masonry, as this is something entirely different, and to reach that degree is not the work of a day, month, or year, but the work of many years. Rosicruciae is not material or ceremonial, but spiritual of the soul, heart, and spirit. No spoken words are used by its children in recognizing each other, as they have surer ways of doing so. They have no lodge rooms where the neophyte goes to receive his initiation, nor are they any benefit in the sense that sick benefits are paid by them in money. Rosicrucians do not sell their secrets, but give them to those who are ready for them and are fit to receive them after they have been tried and found worthy. If you desire to become an initiate, beware of ceremonial initiation. Do not think you can receive such initiation in a day or a month, for you cannot. One can buy wisdom, for wisdom, like eternal life, is above all price. Seek and ye shall find has been the command ever since the world began. Okay. Here we go. The Rose Cross Order, its history, teachings, rules, regulations concerning him who founded the order in America. Who and what are we? We are honor, manhood, goodness, try. Motto. He who enters here must be a man. He must put aside all prejudices and bigotry, must believe in the fatherhood of God and the immortality of the soul and the universal brotherhood of man, and be willing to believe and accept it as a fact that there are men equally as good in other than his own organization. Very, 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 very important, I think. Because otherwise, People get locked up in their own pride. Okay, so the Rose Cross Order. I think we're getting there. The Rose Cross Order, its history, teachings, rules, regulations, and concerning him who founded the order in America. And then we have a couple of. Okay, so we have a little cross thing here next to that subtitle, and the thinker and his thoughts, and we have a double cross thing there. So let's just go down to that really quickly, which for some strange reason is on the next page. This prospectus is from the writings of Dr. Randolph. Permission and full authority was given to us in 1895 to follow his work and use this matter in all rules and regulations made by him. The Thinker and His Thoughts was written by F.B. Dowd and appeared in several of Dr. Randolph's copyrighted books. Okay. There is but little thought among the world of men. The great stream rushes on in murmuring rivulets here and roaring torrents there, or like ocean billows breaking upon the barren shores in deafening thunders. Devoid of thought, these thunders, the roaring, the murmuring of men is not thought, but money. In every age of the world, the genuine thinker has stood alone like a solitary tree in the vast desert. His thought has seemed to shroud him from other men as with the pall of ages. There is another class, however, who are called thinkers, and are lauded to the skies as geniuses who stand in a different relationship to the masses of men. These are poets and philosophers who fashion and mold thought for their own time. Such cull the flowers of existence, and have arrayed them in garbs angelically lovely in their view, present them for the acceptance and adoration of the non-thinkers. But the real thinker exhumes the primitive rocks of man's existence and basic nature and lays bare the native granite of his nature, wonderful and kaleidoscopic, which he exposes to the softening influences of storm and sunshine. It matters not to him in the excavation be deep or the rocks be rough and ill-shapen. It is his mission to bring them to surface. He is not unlike the insect which in the bottom of old ocean rears its domes of rocks, whose only music is this roar of the rushing waves and the dashing of spray against its edifice. For he hath builded a temple of unhewn rocks, of infinite thought, wherein he dwells alone, which, like the cities of pearl in the deeps of the sea, shall yet be the foundation of a new continent of thought, shall yet be engrafted in the temples wherein the teeming myriads of remote ages shall worship. His thought has not been of his own seeking. It comes upon him as comes the hurricane upon the landscape, or over the calm breasts of the slumbering sea. It sometimes lays him down and desolate in the filth and debris of isolation and misapprehension, misery and decay, and at other times it carries him upon the lightning wings upon which topmost clouds of the thinker's world. Foremost among the real and genuine thinkers of the age stand one P.B. Randolph, the author of many astounding and magnificent volumes. Among them, but not of them, a mystic in the true sense of the word, and a mystic of the very loftiest order, Alfred Tennyson, Britain's laureled poet, in his beautiful description of the wakeful dreamer, had most undoubtedly this man before his mental vision that when the musical lines flowed out from his soul. He says, and applied to the subject of his sketch, how truly, quote, angels have talked with him and showed him thrones. Ye know him not. He was not one of ye. Ye scorned him with an undiscerning scorn. Ye could not read the marvel in his eye, the still, serene abstraction he hath felt, the vanities of after and before, albeit his spirit and his secret heart, the stern experiences of converse lives. The linked woes of many a fiery charge, hath purified and chastened and made free. Always there stood before him night and day, on wayward vari-colored circumstances, the imperishable presence serene, colossal, without form, or sense, or sound, dim shadows but unwaning presences, four-faced to four corners of the sky, and yet again three shadows fronting one forward, one respectant, three but one, and yet again, and evermore. For the first two were not, but only seemed, one shadow in the midst of a great light, one reflex from eternal or time, one mighty countenance of perfect calm, awful and most invariable eyes, for him the silent congregated hours, severe youth and youthful brows, with shining eyes. Daughters of mine, divinely tall beneath, smiling a godlike smile, the innocent light of earliest youth, piercing through and through with all keen knowledge of low embowed eld. upheld and ever hold aloft the cloud, which drops low hung on either gate of life, both birth and death he in the centre fixed, saw far on each side through the grated gates, most pale and clear and lovely distances, he often lying broad awake, and yet remaining from the body and apart, in intellect and power and will hath heard, time flowing in the middle of the night, and all things creeping to lay of doom. How could ye know him? Ye were yet within the narrow circle. He had well nigh reached the last, which, with a region of white flame, pure without heat, into a larger air, unburning, and another of black hue, investeth and ingirds all other lives. And that's the end of the poem. To him the great surging waves of the civilization hath brought only woe, but they have not destroyed him, nor his work. From the depths of his great heart, from the garrets of poverty, hath he sent his riches of thought, which the world in its barrenness could not understand or appreciate, broadcast upon the ice-locked wastes. To him the spacious sophistries of the day have been only the pullings of infancy, forgetful of the little present, in view of the dead past, with its myriad eyes of all faded lustrelessness, gazing out of the thickening night of decay at him, forgetting of the shining orbs of the overarching skies of today, in view of the darkening stars and dead worlds of foretime, which once blazed with pristine splendor. He hath walked alone among the catacombs of Egypt, and questioned her ruins, her pyramids, her temples, and her drifting sands, and brought back her answer, which he has given to the world, a priceless legacy under the title Pre-Adamite Man. Beyond all question, the most exhaustive, profound, convincing, and satisfactory work upon human iniquity the world ever saw, or will ever again for many a long decade. Rested he then, after completing his great work, on the human origins? Nay, but casting it at the feet of the world, dedicating it by direct request to his personal friend and the friend of mankind, the lamented Abraham Lincoln. He, discouraged on all hands by ungenerous rivalry and envy, forthwith applied the whole power of his exhaustless mind to the solution of a still mightier problem, and with fearless tread, lighted only by the lamp of God, he entered the gloomiest crypts of being, and dragged from the portals of the tomb its reluctant answer to the great question which hath burst the heart of men from earliest time. If a man die, shall he liveth again? In doing which he died to the present, as much so as they whom he questioned. This man hath not sought in college halls for the thoughts of the mighty deed, but with his unaided hand he held aside the curtain that hides the past, walked through the shadow, and talked face to face with the glorious founders of earth's religion, stood dazed and appalled before the effulgent glories of Rosicrucia's blazing temples and the hierarchies of the skies. Frightened with gems from the golden shores of eternity and jewels from the crowns of the upper hosts in the farther heavens, returning he hath cast them also at our feet in his two works, dealing with the dead and the disembodied man, either of which works are sufficient to rest the fame of any man upon, no matter how profound a thinker or expert a fashioner of thought. And I here assert without fear of contradiction that these two works of rare and impassioned genius in their scope and profound simplicity, yet majestic and surpassing range or sweep of thought, are not equaled by any other similar works in existence, and they have made and are still making their mark and influencing the thought and literature of the age, in spite of prolonged and envious efforts to hurl them down to death. They still live, thank God, to bless the world and instruct mankind. Not satisfied with this, and hearing much talk of a hell, he sought and found its adamantine walls, and all charred and blackened with the smoke of eternal torment, and bursting through them, stood undismayed amid the howling demons and the shrieks and groans of the lost, walking unscratched amid its fierce flames, and dragged from its darkened cavern the idea itself, showed it to be the gaping herd, the uncharitable, ungrateful, unthinking, forgetful world which starved him for his pains to be only in the miseducated human heart. This he has demonstrated in answer to the groans of the civilized world under the curse of the, quote, social evil, unquote, in his two masterpieces called Love and Its Hidden History, and the Master Passion, or the Curtain Raised. Here he has lifted the sacred veil before which the civilized world bows down and worships, and calls the hand profane and unclean which dares disturb. Here he has told us the hidden meaning of the, quote, sin against the Holy Ghost, unquote, which, according to one of the earth's greatest thinkers, is unpardonable. By mistaken policy, Dr. Randolph was induced to issue his second volume on human affection. His first was The Grand Secret, now out of print, under a nom de plume, he subsequently saw his error in that respect, made several alterations, and enlarged it somewhat, and was preparing to issue another edition when a seeming accident, but in reality providence, gave birth to another masterly volume on the same theme. Quote, the Master Passion, or the Curtain Raised, unquote, and also determined him to publish both works hereafter under his own name and with his own imprint thereon. The circumstances were alluded to. It is not necessary to mention further than to say that the preface of, quote, Love in History, unquote, was taken from the volume after it was printed, but as was said before, that rejected stone, that unfortunate preface, grew into the most perfect and comprehensive volume on human love that ever saw the light on this green earth of ours. Now both volumes are published within one cover, and no work of the century is created a greater interest, being more widely circulated, or doing half the good that it is, and it should be in the hands of every man, woman, child in the land, for if it were, 'twere well for the good world. These volumes comprised but of a few of those written by Dr. Randolph, but owing to their trenchant power and reformatory character, I regard them as the most important of those now in print. Says B. Johnson Pilkington of San Francisco, California, in a communication to a Boston paper under the date of November 21st, 1861. Quoting, one after another has visited our shores of the army of humanities teachers, and last but far from least came P.B. Randolph, and of him, as an acknowledgment of his service, gratifying to his many friends, but more because knowledge of the noble self-sacrifice of any person should be the world's property as an example, I wish here to speak. We may praise, for he has gone again, sailing this morning via New York, where he will make but a very short stay for Egypt, Persia, and the Orient, has written 2 small but important works, delivered something like 20 lectures or orations, rather, and the universal testimony of friends and the foes of liberalism is, that no speeches ever given on this coast have equaled them for scope, power, and eloquence. Pouring forth the tale of his own trials, temptations, falls, and efforts to rise again, he has carried conviction to many an obdurate heart, and there cometh much good out of every Nazareth, but especially out of the imperial Rosicrucia. And Nazareth, again, or Nazarene, or it means to walk with God in Aramaic. So, just so you guys know, if you didn't know that, there you go. That's how they're actually talking about. Come much good out of every one who walks with God, but especially out of imperial Rosicrucia. There you go. Many a narrow-minded bigot who listened to him at first under protest has had his soul expanded and openly declares, where I was blind before, now I see. He was some little time in gaining a foothold, but did it. Large-hearted, condemning none, speaking well of all, and speaking just the needed words to all, his rooms and places of resort became daily a crowded levee, where, as he felt their needs, he dispensed intellectual, moral, and material healing to those who asked it. Pecuniary success reigned upon him, friendships clustered warm around him, yet strange to say, when everything that makes life pleasant was being lavishly offered him, he electrified us by telling us that he had received commands to depart. Refusing money, the writer is cognizant of sums having been offered him varying from $20 to $200, and in one case thousands of dollars, with the words, I am a Rosicrucian and cannot accept money, keep it. All I want will come as I need it. Untwining the daily deepening associations forming to keep him here, putting back fraternal love, strong as that of a woman's heart, with the tears in his eyes, sorrow in his heart, he has gone on a journey over 30,000 miles for 2 years in strange lands among inhospitable solitudes, and all for an idea. He went to seek more light, who was already universal in knowledge and beyond all rivalry the first, best, and most clear view seer and clairvoyant on the globe. Let no one hereafter condemn P.B. Randolph. He is a self-sacrificing, grand moral hero. God bless you, Pascal. And hundreds, no, and thousands hereafter will echo the benediction. You have commenced a work here that is already assured of immortality, and let it comfort you in your wanderings that through you, try, the motto of every Rosicrucian, will have a power, a moral and mental influence never before possessed by word of angel or mortal utterance. He has not yet finished his literary labors, but is already engaged upon a massive work called, quote, The Book of Rosicrucia, unquote, written at the instance of the Supreme Grand Lodge of the Order in America, Europe, and Asia. Toil on, O genius rare, toil on, brave thinker. Bow low thy head before the mighty thoughts which crown upon thee, great rocks though they be, from out of the temple of infinite thought. Toil on, thou knowest not why, yet thou rarest here and now the dome of thought of the greatest hereafter of the world, or the great hereafter of the world. What matter the mad ravings of the multitude to thee? Yet those others who come after, shall build monuments on thy footprints and use as textbooks thy works in Rosicrucia's glorious temples of yet to be. 2 weeks after leaving California, he left for the Orient for the purpose of gathering information respecting human antipathy and ethnology, and treading spots sacred from associations connected with Christ, Plato, Mohammed, and other great characters. This was carried out completely, and in 1861 too successfully visited England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Malta, Egypt, Arabia, Syria, Palestine, Turkey, and Greece. The result being his celebrated work, Pre-Adamite Man, whereof 3 editions were exhausted in a little over 8 months. This volume was dedicated to Abraham Lincoln, then president, at the express desire of that great martyr. Wow. At the president's suggestion, Dr. Randolph in 1864 went to New Orleans and entered on the great work of educating the children of the free people. With that success, let the hundreds of grateful people speak. The life motto of this man was, pledged to no sect, to no creed confined, the world my home, my brethren all mankind. And he lived up to it. His work was endorsed, and he was the close friend, associate, and even advisor of such men as B.F. Wade, United States Senator J.P. Sullivan of New Orleans, and many of the leading lawmakers and rulers of the time. Abraham Lincoln was possibly one of the truest and best friends he ever had, and it was through the great fraternity that Lincoln received his first instructions concerning the freeing of the slaves. Who assassinated him, we know. Who assassinated him, we know. Oh. Wow. I mean, it explains a lot, guys. And another aspect of Abraham Lincoln is that he created his own debt-free bank. Okay, he pulled away from the Babylonian-style banking sacrificial usury system, and that's how he actually financed the Civil War to eventually free these slaves. And I believe that he was murdered for both that reason and other spiritual reasons as well by the so-called Holy Roman Empire. Well, continuing. Even one who persecuted Randolph and tried but failed to prosecute him said, to this man, philosophers cross the sea from India's hills, sages from France, mandarins from China, noblemen from England, thinkers from Germany, and even crowned kings invite him to their courts. Randolph was invited by Napoleon to his court and was the master of the Rosicrucian lodge to which Napoleon belonged, where he passes in and out of the proudest king among them all. How does he do it? In 1858, he broke from the ranks of the party he belonged to, and the whole creed united among almost to a man to crush him out. See Soul, the soul world. How did it result? He stood firmer and rose higher than ever. Whence his power? Whence his power? Question mark. At this very moment, he stands literally stripped of all he owns in the world. How long will he stay so? Wait and see. Over 20 years ago, Randolph, known as a Rosicrucian, and in that period he ascended the steps of the mystical brotherhood, outstripped thousands and rushing past hundreds of gray beards in the mental race until he attained the chieftainship of the true Rosicrucians of America and the Isles of the Seas, and finally to supreme high priesthood of the order and grand mastership of the combined lodges of the earth, likewise reaching the double office through his absolute defiance of poverty and wealth and persistent pursuit of ideas alone. 20 years ago, Randolph began his part of the work. 15 years ago, he suddenly disappeared from the American continent. When next heard from, he had not only made a tour of Europe, circulated in the highest literary, philosophical, scientific, and even royal circles, but among the most secret mystical societies of England and France, and had penetrated Greece, Syria, Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, until at length the London Times and the New York Herald correspondents announced him as the favored guest of the Abyssinian king Theodore and his black majesty of Dongola, and he passed everywhere unquestioned, unscratched by serpent, climate, beast, or man. I don't know if they're gonna talk about Napoleon and I may have talked about him earlier, but I think that's a good point, when they talk about Napoleon being part of this. And I don't know if it's in this one or another one, but they definitely mentioned that Napoleon being part of that, unfortunately succumbed to his ego, and which ended up becoming his downfall. But if you look at what Napoleon actually did, is that he destroyed the quote unquote Holy Roman Empire, the Habsburg hold on Europe. And that is not something that people should forget, because as much as he is not, all people are not purely good, or whatever else, like that is an amazing achievement in and of itself. Because as I'm going to show you guys in many future videos, this quote Holy Roman Empire was really truly the actual quote unquote controllers, and they still are. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. Rather, rather a testimonial for a prosecutor to give to the prosecuted, but volumes could be filled of such testimony. Okay, so that quote of him being, all that stuff being greased, that was by a prosecutor in a court of law, I guess. Interesting. Rather a testimonial for a prosecutor to give to the prosecuted, but volumes could be filled of such testimony. As I write this, I have before me testimonials of presidents, kings, emperors, senators, judges, and others. Men who were ruling the entire nations and republics of that time, but there was none that he thought as much as of Abraham Lincoln. The Chicago Tribune once said of him, the doctor believes in three things: God, Abraham Lincoln, and Ben Butler. Of the Rosicrucians, Dr. Randolph, the founder of the system of America and the Grand Master of the system throughout the entire world at the time he wrote it, he said, many, but not all, the alchemists and hermetic philosophers were acolytes of that vast secret brotherhood, which had thrived from the earliest ages and under different names in different lands, has performed, is still performing its mission. The members of the mystic union were the magi of old, who flourished in Chaldea, Mesopotamia, ages before one of their number, Heber, left his native plains on foreign soil, founded the Hebraic Confederation. They were the original Sabaeans, who for long ages preceded the sages of Chaldea. They were the men who founded that Semitic civilization, the faint shade of which we find having leaped along avenues of centuries in the moldy records of early China, itself numbering in its years by the thousand. Of this great brotherhood sprang Brahma, Buddha, Lao Tzu, Zoroaster, Plato, the Gnostics, the Essenes, and therefore Christ himself, who was an Essene, and who preached the sacred doctrines of the Mountain of Light. They were the dreamers of the ages, the sun of the epochs, eclipsed occasionally, but anon bursting forth in glory again. They were the men who first discovered the significance of fire, and that there was something deeper than life in man, profounder than intellect in the universe. Whatever the transcendent light now illumes the world comes from the torches which they lit at the fountain whence all light streamed upon that mystic mountain which they alone had courage and endurance to climb, and climbed too over a ladder whose rungs were centuries apart. Hermes Trismegistus, Egypt's mighty king, and that other Hermes, Asclepius the ninth, was an adept, a brother, and a priest, as was Melchizedek before him, that famous pre-Adamite monarch, that Melchizedek who was reputed to have been born of a thought and to have lived over countless ages, and so with the Greek Mercurius, theirs too was the wondrous learning wherein Moses was skilled, and at that fountain the Hebrew Joseph drank. Nothing original in thaumaturgy, the theology, philosophy, psychology, entology, and ontology, but they gave it to the world, and when philosophers thought they had gained new thoughts and truths, the records of the order proved to them they have been old ages before the Adamic age of chronology, and to have been the common property of the adepts. I hope you guys are paying attention to that. All the way coming up here from the Hermes Trismegistus, all the way down here. This is going to be a big part of much more in-depth, deep dives that we're going to do. And that Christianity is essentially the same thing. And in its base, same with Judaism. But unfortunately, we have nasty people who don't want to give us the truth. And they peppered both these books with so many plagiarisms, lies, but there's also all the truth you need in all of these pages. So again, if you have eyes to see and you have ears to hear, pay attention. But I'll definitely be showing you a lot more evidence to what this whole paragraph just explained. So continuing, I have been led to these remarks and explanations first for the purpose of finally and authoritatively settling the vexed question concerning the Rosicrucians and to throw light on the work, the Supreme Grand Masters of the Order, founders. Oh, here we go. This will be interesting. Oh, God. I'm sorry, guys, but it's going to be a lot of names and a lot of dates. So I hope you're ready. Supreme Grand Masters of the Order, founders. Isis, Osiris, Hermes, Mercury, Trismegistus, Thoth, B. That's C5000. Okay, next is Buddha, Asclepius, Ptah, Meneptah, Rameses, Ramsus, Ramsindinus, sorry, Ramus, Azoth the First, Menes, Melchizedek, Renosoph, Tubalzoth, Azith, Zerduth, Lautzi, Presterjan, Seleucus Nicator, Zamith, Badur, Rebi Nebul, Sultan Ahmed Shemsen, Alihu Ben Kudi, Mohammed Talha, Ziobir, Othman, Abu Sumfain, Beni Rahar, Abu Bir, Hossein Ali, Il Kazim, Nawari Il Shuhin, Babir Il Mokana, Zaid, Hamden Azoth, Hossein Zawud, Awazizarak, fall of the First Temple, Iraq, Ulyss at Muhammad's death, AD 632. Second Temple, Oriental branch, death of Muhammad, 632, succeeded by Omar King, Hierarch and Supreme Grand Master, AD 634-644, Osman, 635, Ali, suspension of the temple and propaganda for 313 years. Whoa. Then I guess the rise of Islam really did a number on these guys, huh? Then came Hierarch and Grand Master Caliph of Egypt, Morz, AD 969, Aziz Billah 975, Hakam 996, until succeeded by Dahek 1021, Mustam Billah 1026, Birkyak 1029, Mostali 1094, Muzor 1101, Hafed 1130. And honestly, I'm not going to go through these names because there are so many names. And if you guys want to check it out, here he is. There's the Ottoman Empire. You can hit the pause button and read. And here's the rest of it. Okay, so it finishes off here. End the Oriental rule. So blah blah blah. So apparently the Ottoman Empire were a part of this. And one of the interesting things about this, guys, is that in the 1500s, let's see here if I can find here. Okay, so you see Suleiman the Magnificent here, right? 1520, loss of Rhodes by the order. 1522, they besieged Malta. 1565, Selim II started in 1566. But in this period of the loss of Suleiman II the Magnificent and the loss of Rhodes by the order, and then the besiege of Malta, which also created what is now called the Knights of Malta, but they existed long before then. One of the things about this period of time here is one of the interesting things I'm going to be bringing out to you guys of the Holy Roman Habsburg Empire, which was Spain, Austria, Germany, and eventually in the 1570s, it ended up becoming all of Belgium and the Netherlands. All together were all surrounding France. And one of the things I actually didn't realize until recently was that during this period of time, around the time when they besieged Malta, France and the Ottoman Empire worked together to fight the quote-unquote Holy Roman Habsburg Empire. And I find that fascinating because it's part of history where people think that the Christian world and the Ottomans were totally in odds with each other, but it really wasn't necessarily the case. And you can look that up in Wikipedia, and it'll even tell you then there, you know what I mean? So I think that's an important distinction. I will be coming back to this subject very soon, but I wanted to show you that in this list of people, the Second Temple and the people who were leaders of these temples, secret leaders, one of them was the person whom France was connected with and who worked to fight this Habsburg German Empire, i.e., the Reich. So keep that in mind. There's a little bit of clueage here further for further study and future videos. So the end of the Oriental rule, decay of the Second Temple, establishment of the European and Occidental branches, initiation of 12 adepts founding the Third Temple in America by Pascal B. Randolph, propaganda begun in 1855, First Grand Lodge founded in August 1857 and 1860, dissolution of Grand Lodge and founding of Supreme Grand Lodge at San Francisco, California, November 5th, 1861, John Temple, Supreme Grand Master, 1863, death of Supreme Grand Master, the temple slept from 1861 until 1874, and then P.B. Randolph, Supreme Grand Master and Hierarch and Grand Templar, Knight, Prior, and Hierarch of the Triple Order, rebuilded from the cornerstone laid in Boston, August 7th, 1871. All lodges dissolved by reason of treason, and the Supreme Grand Lodge established in San Francisco, California, December 1874, with the above-named officers founded for thousands of years. April 25th, 1895, the new Grand Master takes seat at the Supreme Grand Master, Grand Templar, Knight, Prior, and Hierarch of the Order of the Rose Cross Order, Supreme Grand Lodge of the Rosy Cross, reinstituted in Pennsylvania, same year. Long live the order. All right, guys, we're getting close to the finish of this book here. I think there's only a couple more pages. So, the Rosicrucians, the outer court, who and what we are, honor, manhood, goodness, try. The Rosicrucians are a body of good men and true working under the Grand Lodge Charter, deriving its power and authority from imperial dome of the Third Supreme Temple of the Order, and the last claiming justly to be oldest association of men on earth, dating from the sinking of the New Atlantis Isle. Interesting, the New Atlantis Isle. Nearly 10,000 years anterior to the days of Plato, and as a Grand Lodge having jurisdiction over the entire continent of North America and the islands of the sea, the Grand Lodge and Temple grant charters and dispensations to found or organize subsidiary lodges and temples anywhere within the limits of its jurisdiction. All Rosicrucians are practical men who believe in progress, law, order, and in self-development. They firmly believe that God helps those who help themselves, and they consequently adopt their motto of the Rosicrucian fraternity, the word try, and they believe that this little word of 3 letters may become a magnificent bridge over which a man may travel from bad to better, and from better to best, from ignorance to knowledge, and from poverty to wealth, and from weakness to power. We constitute a large society in the world, and our ranks bid fair to largely swell in this land of practical men. There are hundreds of men with large cultures, deep intuitions, and liberal minds who actually languish because they do not know each other. There are being no organized body save our own, which invites such men to join its ranks and find the fellowship which such men of such minds need. In our lodges, such men find all they seek and more. And in our reunions, the rarest of best intellects are brought in contact, the best thoughts are elicited, and the truest human pleasure experienced. For as much as nothing impure, ignoble, mean, or unmanly is for an instant tolerated under any circumstance whatsoever, while on the contrary, every inducement is held out to encourage all that is noble, good, true, beautiful, charitable, and manly, and that too in the way totally unknown and unpractical in any other order or association of men. I have already read this earlier in this book. Okay, fine. I'll read the rest. There's only a few pages, so. Every Rosicrucian is known and is sworn brother of every other member of the wide world, and as such is bound to render all possible aid and comfort, except for when such aid would sanction crime or wrongdoing, or interfere with the demands of true public justice. Special order, decency, and sound morals are national prosperity and unity. In all things else, every member is bound to help another, so long as he can do it with a clear conscience and not violate his honor, derogate from his personal dignity, or sully his own manhood. In all things worthy, one assists the other in sickness and sorrow, life and death, and the troubles and trials of the world and society. Each man is eligible to one or all of the degrees, and after once becoming a full member, it is next to impossible that he can ever afterwards come to real want, either from protection in all that is just, counsel in difficulty, food, raiment, shelter, and all true human sympathy, all of which is freely rendered as long as the man remains a worthy dweller of our temple. Thus, the temple helps to ensure its acolytes against want, mitigates their sorrows, enhances their usefulness to themselves and the world, braces and sharpens their intellects, fires their emulation, encourages all manly efforts, assuages their grief, cultivates their hope, strengthens their self reliance, self respect, self effort. It frowns on all wrongdoings, seeks to elevate man in his own esteem, teaches due and royal respect to woman, the laws, society, and the world. It promotes stability of character, makes its votaries strive for manhood in the full, true sense, adopts try as a living, practical motto, and thus, both directly and indirectly, does Rosicrucius seek to increase the sum total of human happiness in the world within and without its walls. This order is a school of the highest and best knowledge of the earth affords. It is unlike any and all others, for in addition to being a mutual fraternity, it reaches out in far higher and nobler aims, only a very few of which are alluded to in this handbook, which is merely to save explanatory communication and to set a standard. One of its main objectives is to be a school of men, to make men more useful by rendering them stronger, more knowing, therefore wiser, therefore happier. As Rosicrucians, we recognize the immense value of sympathy, encouragement, emulation, and persistency. There is no difficult to him who truly wills. Nil mortalibus ardum est. Whatever of good or great man has ever done may still be accomplished by you and I, my brother, if we only think so and set about in right good earnest and no mistake. Try. We proclaim the omnipotence of will, and we declare practically and by our own achievements demonstrate the will of man to be the supreme and all-conquering force when once fairly brought into play. But this power is only negatively strong when exerted for merely selfish or personal ends. When or whatever it is called into action for good ends, nothing can withstand its force. Goodness is power, wherefore we take the best of care to cultivate it. The normal is rendered a mighty and powerful engine for positive good. You cannot deceive a true Rosicrucian, for he soon learns to read you through and through as if you were a man of glass. He attains this power by becoming a Rosicrucian only, nor can it he had only nor can it nor can it be had through any other means. The temple teaches its acolytes how to rebuild this regal faculty of the human soul, the will, how to strengthen, purify, and expand and intensify it. And one of the first results observable after a man has become a true Rosicrucian is that his vanity grows smaller by degrees and beautifully less, for the first thing he fully realizes that all he knows would probably make a quite large book, but all that he does not know would make a book considerably larger, and therefore sets himself to learn. Where there is a will, there is a way, and after getting rid of self conceit, the man finds himself increasing in mental stature by imperceptible gradations, and finds himself a learned man by a process which he cannot fairly comprehend, and one which is neither appreciated or known outside of the fraternity. As a consequence of traveling on his royal road to knowledge, the Rosicrucian soon learned to despise the weakness of wickedness, not by reason of any long-faced cant being poured into his ears, but because he finds out practically that manhood and virtue are safe investments while badness or meanness won't pay. It is a universal testimony of all who have become true Rosicrucians that within its symbolic walls there is a deeply mysterious influence for good pervading its atmosphere, under which every man of the order becomes rapidly but normally individualized and intensified in character, manhood, and influence. The doors of the lodge are never closed against the honest, honorable, and aspiring man, nor can any earthly potentate, no wielder of an empire's scepter, no wearer of a kingly crown, gain admission by reason of his eminence. For though he be a king, he may not be a man. A title far above all others on the earth, a title nobler than any other ever earned by mortals. We Rosicrucians are proud of our eminence, and justly so, for we are a brotherhood of men, and recognize manhood as the true kingship. Hence, we honor that man highest who knows the most and puts his knowledge to the highest and noblest uses, not only towards his brothers, but in any field in the world's greatest garden. For are we not all brethren? Does not the great God rule over and love us? Even so, No man can enter our doors by reason of his wealth. For riches, unless put to manly use, are detrimental, bad, positively injurious. No man can enter our doors by reason of his fame, politics, or religion. The order has nothing to do with a man's politics or religion, and it matters not what a man's creed is, so long as he is a man. The Baptist is welcome, but not as a Baptist, and so on with men of all other faiths. No religion, no faith, no politics can be discussed from our platform. Nor will their introduction be tolerated one moment. We accept men of all creeds, except such as outraged decency, manhood, sound morals, and public order. No man is barred out of our temple by reason of his poverty, for physical beggars are often kings in mind. All we seek or seek for in a man is honor, honesty, and ambition to know more and be better. Usually, the lodges of the order meet twice a month to hear lectures, exchange courtesies, thoughts, news, to listen to invited guests, debate question of art, science, and philosophy, to mutually inform and strengthen each other, to investigate any and all subjects of a proper nature, and to cultivate that manly spirit and chivalric bearing which so well entitles their possessor to be called a man. These are a few of the good things of the Rose Cross. We seek no man, man seeks us. Our facilities for obtaining knowledge and information on all subjects are, as may well be conceived, unsurpassed and unequaled. And there you go. That's the end of that book. That was quite the long read. Um, yes, unfortunately, I do need a better microphone. I apologize. I'm using the microphone on my computer. I have an actual professional microphone, but I don't. What I need is a mixture to actually put it into the computer itself. So I got to go buy like a digital USB mixer or something like that. Which maybe I'll look into that this week. They're not. Some of them aren't too expensive, so like I said, I'm in between jobs, so I have to be kind of frugal. But there you go, guys. Look, the end of this book. This book is pretty interesting. It's got a lot of clues in it. There's a lot of different things that they throw out there. I think the idea of the word "try" is something that I think we can take something. You can take something with that and apply it to your life for sure. Uh, you know, it's one of those things where I mean, how do you, if you don't try, how in the world do you not find any any real information? You know what I mean? Like that's I think to me that's an important distinction. Like I think that's very important. Like and even in your own life, as an example, okay, and I'll just give you guys a quick example here while I check something. Um, in your own life, when you guys have um, when you guys do have a moment in your life when, say, some random thing happens and your idea of, I shouldn't say idea, let's say your programmed reaction kicks into high gear. That's when you have those moments when you can actually stop, think about what is going on, the bigger picture of this, because that's one of the main applicable things that spirituality does for people, is it helps them to center themselves, become more patient, and understanding that, like, say, a significant other or something like that yells at you for something, you're not going to immediately yell back, but instead you're going to stop and think about what's going on. What are they really trying to say to you? Why is their peace disturbed? And how, using your intuition, as they talk about in this book, how can you use your intuition to get to the heart of the matter and actually help them descend from that moment of anger and realize that, oh, I should not have done that. And also, you're in essence, by doing that, you show them that there is a better way of dealing with problems. And that's that inspiration that you can give to people all around you. Okay. And that's something that, in my own experience, is absolutely true. And because you live by, you have to live by example, essentially, and that's the only thing that really, attracts people to certain truths is that does it work? You will know them by their fruits. You know what I mean? And I think that's not something to be just left off to the side of the road and forgotten, because you have absolutely every single day you have just innumerable chances for you to quote unquote try to enter into that spiritual center of yours. And if you're just getting started in this, that's okay. Don't feel like, you know what I mean, you have to feel a certain way or do anything like that. Like, take your time. It's going to take time. And there are, I have always loved this expression that there are as many ways to God as there are souls on earth. And the problem is that we have institutions to tell you that they're the only way, and if you don't follow them, then you're going to go to hell. And the funny thing is that so many Christian churches, no matter how many thousands of different denominations there are, they all seem to think the same idea, which makes no sense. And the thing is that one of the things that they says at the end of this, that the end of the things is, it does not God live, rule over all of us? That why in the world would there be a quote unquote chosen people? That is a completely ridiculous statement. And one of those, in my opinion, one of those things that is erroneous in the Bible itself. There's plenty of stuff that's completely false, half lies, but then there's a lot of sublime truth that's all over it. But it's an amalgamation of a much older idea. And I think that that's one of those things where we should definitely pay attention to some of these idea. You know, it's I just so much of my own experience in life has taught me and just an incredible amount of really amazing lessons. And reading these books, I'm not telling you to believe one thing or the other, but I think these books have certain beneficial ideas that some people are going to pick up on real fast, and some people might take a little while, but none of that matters, because in the end, I share selflessly, and I spend this time to read these books because you know what? They are kind of lost in time. This was published in 1910. The last couple books have all been early 1900s or late 1800s, and there's been some really great, really really nice stuff in here, and especially with some of the, the commentary about the Rockefeller style of being a slave to this system and the tyrannical government forcing us to do things. I mean, how timely is this 1910 book to right now? Look around with the way that the whole society and governments and geopolitics of the world and this insanity that we see in the fanaticism. And here we go. It's all about separation and not about oneness, right? So I guess that'll be it for me for my stream of conscious thought here at the end of this book. This is the second time I've read this. But at least this time I took you guys along for the journey. So I will today or tomorrow or the next day look into fixing the audio so that I can get better sound for you guys. But my computer is also old, so the fan often kicks on, which does affect the sound. And it will affect the sound even with the microphone because that's kind of loud. So I apologize for that. I will do my best, and hopefully in a short period of time, when I do get some more work, I'll be able to buy a newer computer that will not have to be cooled all the time. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you guys got something out of this, and take what you will out of all these books. And I love you all. Please spend the rest of your day in love, happiness, and peace. And I will see you guys in another video. Peace.